when did saying, "If you don't like it, then leave," backfire spectacularly? A former industrial job I used to have said those words verbatim during an all-hands meeting. We were understaffed, underpaid, and overworked, and everyone knew it. Instead of the 2-to-1 ratio of 2 machines to 1 operator for safety reasons, we'd have 4, 6, or 8, because people were getting paid less than most retail jobs to bust their butts in some of the most disgusting work I've ever done. You would come home covered in moldy coolant, metal shavings, and stink. Machines started breaking down because they'd never shut them down to perform maintenance on them, so we'd often have massive problems, which of course meant even more overtime to make up for the broken machines, and people started quitting. Management's response was to tell us that they expected us to work harder, because they couldn't get more help in. One of my co-workers, who generally gave no Fs, asked in front of everyone in that room why they didn't try raising the bad wages and see if they could entice people that way. The response was, "We're not having that conversation right now. If you don't like it, you can quit." Oh, buddy, was that the wrong thing to say? As soon as word got out to the other shifts, what can only be called a frickin' exodus began. We lost half of each shift within the week. I stuck around for a couple more weeks until I had a conflict with my schooling at the time, since one of my classes got out about 30 minutes before my shift, 30 minutes away. So I warned them in advance that I might be a few minutes late one week, maybe. And I got told that I needed to decide, what's more important, your school or your job? So I quit, and I giggled my butt off at the sign in the HR office that said we had an almost 80% turnover rate. Never did find out what happened to that hellhole. But I can't imagine anything good with losing that many people. The poor HR rep seemed like she was just so frickin' done with everything, and seemed so apologetic as she took my badge. Every year, the military has this event they name the Warrior Games. It's like the Olympics for men and women who were injured while serving. I'm a decent cyclist, so I was elected to represent the Marine Corps team in that event. I'm not sure where they hold the event these days, but the year I was selected, they flew us out to Colorado Springs. When I got there, I quickly realized that 99% of the Marines competing were still active duty. I'd retired a few years prior, so it was weird being around Marines again. Almost immediately after arriving, the senior leaders and officers in charge began demanding that I get my hair cut and to shave my beard. At first I laughed it off and thought they were joking. Turns out they were quite serious. The lady who was in charge of the Marine team was a major, and she took me off to the side and ordered me to get a haircut. I reminded her that I'd retired a few years prior and was no longer required to abide by active military grooming standards. Then a light bulb went off in her head, and with a smirk she said, "Well, you either get a haircut or you can go home. Your choice." So I smirked back and said, "Guess I'm flying home." They'd already pre-purchased our airplane tickets, so all I did was call Delta, explain what happened, and the lady on the other end transferred my ticket to a flight home the next day. I'd taken a few weeks off work to attend this event, so I just went back home and enjoyed my time off with my hair and beard. It must be an absolute mindfrick to a higher-up in the military when they're told no by a supposed subordinate. Like, this is an environment of near total obedience. There are stories of people crashing their ships in the Navy because they were told to hold the course by their ignorant officers. So having a guy just going, "Okay, thanks, bye, F you," must have been a jolt. When I was a kid, I stayed at a friend's house for the weekend. My friend's mother was one of those parents who, at the dinner table, required their kids to eat everything on their plate come hell or high water. I'd been served way too much food and said that I can't eat it all. The mother said to me, "You can either finish your food or leave the table." I promptly left the table. This totally blew the minds of my friends and his siblings. It had never occurred to them that leaving the table was actually a viable option. When my mother picked me up the next day, my friend's mother told her what had happened and said I was the rudest little boy. I think my mother was actually quite proud of me. My boss said, "If you don't like it, try finding a job like this one with better pay and benefits." So I googled it, and now I've just had my 14th year anniversary at the new job. It's twice the pay and insane benefits. My great-grandmother is notorious for being a mean old witch. It was Thanksgiving at her house, and much of the extended family were there. She started harping on my mum's cousin for something, like she always does, and my mum's cousin was like, "Grandma, can't we just have a nice dinner for once?" And great-grandma was like, "If you don't like it, you can leave." And every last cousin, aunt, uncle, and all of their food disappeared to my aunt's house. They later put Grandma in a home because they were tired of taking care of her when she was so viciously mean to her own children. She's still in the home, age 94. I had an insufferable supervisor once, and we'd have these 15-minute pre-shift meetings. The guy would just stand there and lord over everyone for the duration and talk about how bad we were doing. The phrase, "we suck," was one of his favorites. Finally one day, he's really on one and summons the testicular fortitude to say, "If you don't like it, there's the door." His second-in-command got up and said, "Frick this," and walked out. The guy stood there stunned for about 5 seconds and then ran out the door after him. He later ended up having some mental instability and quitting. The second-in-command is now the supervisor. I survived all these meetings by default assuming he wasn't talking to me. My husband worked at a really toxic job for a while. As staff got fired or quit, they weren't replaced to cut costs, and instead the remaining 2 employees were worked to death. Finally, the owner, who was a crappy boss and terrible businessman, called a meeting with the 2 to try and force an attitude adjustment. The employees tried to be constructive and talk about things they saw that needed to be improved upon to make things work better, and of course, this egotistical jerk owner wouldn't have it. He told them that if they couldn't handle the expectations, then they were free to leave. So they did. Both of them left immediately and never set foot in the store again. I don't think the owner was expecting that at all. He expected them to grovel and beg to keep their jobs and thank him for the opportunity to work 70-hour weeks under his tyrannical rule. My husband called me after that meeting and was so upset he could hardly tell me what had happened. He was terrified. He was so sure I'd be angry at him for quitting his job when we weren't really in a position that I could support us. I wasn't mad at all. I was proud of him for not taking the crap that was being doled out to him and doing what was best for his mental health. He's a damn good man and he deserved better. Back in the mid-90s, a coworker was under a great deal of stress. He was performing a low-skill role in a high-skill industry during tremendous crunch that was very important to the company. Entry-level stuff. More a job that's a stepping stone than a career. Despite that, he was an integral member of the team with institutional knowledge and background that couldn't be replaced overnight. Actually, it couldn't be replaced at all, as it turns out. During a team meeting to go over status, progress, and stuff, he asked our boss for some help as he was overwhelmed and simply couldn't keep up anymore. The boss said, "If you can't handle, there's the door." The guy just stood up and without a single word he walked right out. The boss ended up having to do his job until completion of the initiative. My sister had a habit of picking fights with people, and when it wasn't going her way, she'd tell them she was removing them from her life. She's done it to boyfriends, longtime friends, sorority sisters, and she's done it to me twice. The first time I rolled my eyes because she's younger than me. After the second time, my sister told me, "I'm removing you from my life, you're toxic," and unfriended me and told the family I was toxic. In reality, I just wasn't letting her be toxic, selfish, and under the influence of whatever she was on with, to me, my spouse, and my kids. So naturally, she decided it was a good idea to threaten us. I said, "Okay, fine." Per her usual routine, after a few weeks, she came around and wanted to pretend she'd never said the things she said. I didn't respond. She claimed it was all a joke and she had a right to be in my kids' lives. I haven't spoken to her in 2 years. I honestly don't miss her drama, and it was the best decision for my family. It highlighted how bad the generational dysfunction was in my family, and how it was expected to just overlook bad behavior and people please for everyone else's comfort. I realized that I didn't want my kids to repeat that cycle. I vowed to always put them first. I'm not popular in my wider family right now, but I've never been happier, and this was the first year I got to enjoy holidays without having panic attacks or dread. When someone walks out of your life, let them. Nobody has a right to be in kids' lives. I don't even think all parents deserve to be in their kids' lives if they behave badly enough. I don't really have any mad aunts, but I know they're a whole thing, and most people that have them would leap at the chance to never see them again. I worked at a Thai restaurant. The owner's daughter, who was manager, left town for a couple of weeks, and we realized once she left that she was stealing our tips and tipping us out way less than herself for over a year of working there with her. When she got back, we confronted her at the end of the night during her shift, since she refused to meet with us in an official group meeting, and the 4 of us servers called her out. She said, "If you don't like it, then get out or sue me." We were all 18 to 20 years old and didn't really know what to do, so 3 of us quit on the spot in that moment and walked out the door. I'll never forget the look on her face. My lecturer wanted us to have an extra class online after the exams because we'd missed a lesson during the semester. We asked him if he could at least move it to the afternoon, but he insisted it be at 9 a.m. So everyone logged into classroom, but only 2 people were answering his questions. He then decided to take the register and everyone was present. Then he said, "I'm not forcing anyone to be here. If you don't want to participate in the lesson, go." Everyone logged out immediately except for me because I'd gone to the bathroom, and when I came back I found him calling for my name. He later logged out and sent me the PowerPoint for the lesson. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. When I worked third shift at Walmart, the management tried to change a shirt policy overnight. They all of a sudden decided that we had to wear the blue collared shirts and not the blue t-shirts anymore. One of the managers, named Jackie, who was a total witch, came up to my two friends and myself and told us that we had to go buy new shirts right then or go home. So we left. The frozen and dairy products that we were stocking didn't get done that night, and we got to go home and play Destiny all night. Next day, they never said another word about our shirts. Screw Walmart, by the way. Unless you're a World of Warcraft raider, this probably doesn't apply, but I've been in a number of raid formations, especially back in the day, where the raid leader announces some wonky loot rules that disproportionately benefit himself or his close friends. And then he'd say, if you don't like it, then leave. And then, yeah, everyone bails. I used to be the co-owner and station manager for a small online radio station. We were all digital, so I rarely met any of our staff in person, and we were online 24/7, so if I was awake, I was pretty much always working. We had a dedicated team of assistant station managers, about 6 of them, in charge of various things, and we'd have once-weekly meetings with me, the assistant managers, and the other co-owner. None of us were paid, this was strictly a volunteer gig. It cost the co-owner and I money to keep the station on the air, but it was a labor of love. At one point, I began to get close to one of the assistant managers and we started dating. The co-owner of the station got jealous, I think, and began to give him crap about his work, demanding that he redo graphics and coding over and over and over, even when it was perfectly fine. He laid into the assistant manager at one of our weekly staff meetings and I lost it. I told him that he needed to stop his behavior or I was going to walk. Fine, he said. This is my station. If you don't like the way I run it, leave. So I quit on the spot. As did half of the assistant station managers, then a large number of the DJs. Within 2 years, the whole thing had to be shut down because no one could work with my former co-owner because he was a petty tyrant who had to have things his way and couldn't let people live their lives. I've never felt such petty glee as when I saw their off-the-air blog post. My mother is well known for her Christmas, Easter, or whatever holiday tantrums. She threw a particularly good one when I was about 14 and yelled the infamous title line. My uncle and aunt piled themselves, their daughter, and myself and my 5 siblings into their 4-wheel drive. We all left to go to their place, picking up KFC for lunch on the way. I don't know what kind of Christmas my mother had, but ours was pretty good in the end. I'm so glad we didn't get pulled over, though. I was the whistleblower at my workplace. I witnessed my manager mentally and physically mistreat a 101-year-old woman. I worked in a care home. I raised the alarm and staff above the manager didn't deal with things quick enough, and over worry of a bad name, because press had gotten a hold of the story, they were trying to keep it quiet and were going to allow this manager back to work on a final warning. We were a small team, about 8 of us. When they told us that, all of us reached into our bags and threw our notices at them. It was all of us or her. A week or so later, and them paying her £15,000, she was gone. The worst thing is, we were a charity home. She basically got thousands and thousands of pounds for bullying a vulnerable elderly woman. Something like this happened to me in my previous HOA, about 15 years ago now. We were at a board meeting in the HOA president's unit, and he was power-tripping and trying to illegally use his power to bully a particular owner he didn't like personally. When the rest of the board wouldn't go along with what he wanted, he basically said, "Fine, I quit, get out." We did and reconvened at my unit, where we quickly decided to do the appropriate thing. Older people can be quite the jerks in my experience. New management was hired and took over scheduling from me, who was covering for a now-gone manager, without understanding any of the intricacies of scheduling. After 2 weeks, we had an all-staff meeting to address grievances based on her incredibly poor method of scheduling, and she refused to back down, dropping the famous ultimatum. Out of a staff of 40 or so employees, I think maybe half a dozen stayed. Is anyone else out there just sort of listening for the vicarious joy of quitting a crappy workplace? I feel like I dreamed of doing this sort of thing every day in any number of my service jobs. Well, I wasn't there for this one unfortunately, but my high school English class had this scenario. The senior advanced placement English teacher was notorious in my graduating class for not really giving a damn about a lot of the students. From the way I was told, they were going over quizzes, to which the teacher started going over some vague subjective response and how it was wrong. The students started arguing and the conversation came full circle to where the teacher started agreeing with the students. Once he realized this, he started backing off that answer and correcting the students again, causing more frustration. This resulted in a student saying, "There's no point in learning this if we're wrong even if we were right at one point." Well, if there's any of you who don't find this valuable, you can stand up and leave the classroom. 2 of his 28 students remained. I was absent because I was sick, but what a sight it would have been. I had a teacher pull the old, "If you don't want to behave, you can leave my classroom" on a classmate. The whole class got up and left. Things hadn't been going well in this class since he'd started teaching us. The main problem was that he was a really bad teacher. Like, he seemed to have no knowledge of his own subject, history, or at least was incredibly bad at transferring his knowledge. We didn't have any respect for him, and he tried to keep us in line by being extremely strict, but in an unfair way. He wouldn't let anyone ask questions anymore because he could never answer them. He screamed at students if they quietly asked their neighbor for a pencil, that sort of stuff. I don't remember what my classmate did that angered that teacher, but it was something minor. We were all fed up with him, so when he told my classmate to just leave, we all did. Felt rebellious and like I was part of a bigger plan or something. It was great. We got into trouble for it, but also the teacher got fired, so it was worth it. Had my first job as a massage therapist. My friend from school also got a job there. The business was taken over by this lady who decided to also hire her friend, who hadn't even graduated massage therapy school. The owner's friend would start sessions way earlier than necessary if the clients got there early, which meant that sometimes my friend and I would sometimes have to scramble to get ready for couples massages with her. For example, my friend was still commuting and was a few minutes away, and the owner's friend tried to start having the clients get ready. It was frustrating because we'd have no time to talk to the clients before the sessions like we were supposed to. One day I politely told her that my friend wasn't there yet, so she'd have to wait to put the clients on the table until he was actually there so he could talk to his client. She got super mad and told the new owner I was being rude to her. Well, the new owner clearly got a different story to the truth and started texting me telling me I was in trouble. I didn't even find out what the actual issue was directly from her, but I knew it was because of her friend because of how quickly it happened, after I told her friend to wait to start that session. I tried to set up a meeting in person to talk about it, but she kept refusing and said we could talk about it over text. I decided I wasn't going to deal with that unprofessional behavior from a manager and walked in to tell her I quit. Turns out my friend also quit that day because of her friend's nonsense. The business owner was left with her unlicensed and uncertified friend and a stand-in that was extremely unreliable on a really full schedule. When I was in high school, I was part of an FRC robotics team. The coach decided that nobody who missed a practice during the last week of the season would be allowed to attend the tournaments. Of course, the band class had a mandatory concert during one of the meetings. So when I brought up that I wouldn't skip the graded band concert, the coach gave the ultimatum. About a third of the team got up and left, including all of the captains. The coach backed out of that really quick. At an off-campus college party, the host, a tenor voice major in the music department, started playing Wagner and Verdi operas at full blast. When those attending asked him to play something else that they'd all like, he said, "You all need to learn to like opera. If you won't give it a fair try, you can always just leave." And with that, everyone left. Grade 8 language arts class. To preface this, I was never an aggressive student, and generally the teacher's pet. The person who, if a teacher was away for the day, would be tasked in their notes to the sub to be able to assist and give them directions. 25-odd years ago, shortly after the definitive tragic school weapon tragedy at the end of the 90s. This context is critical to the story. Middle of nowhere, Alberta, a small country school. So our regular teacher was out for the day and had left a note directing the sub to ask me if she had questions about what had been covered. The sub comes in, reads notes, and opens the teacher's weekly planner. Then begins writing our words for the weekly spelling test on the board, except she opened the wrong week. Instead of the current week, she had opened the prior week. At this point, being the goody two-shoes that I was, and much to my classmates' dismay, although our teacher would have corrected us when she was back, so it wouldn't have helped them anyway, I raised my hand and politely informed her that I believed she'd gotten the page wrong, as we'd previously covered this material. What happened next I couldn't make up. She lost it, started ranting about how teens in general and me specifically were a danger to her, how she didn't know who were her friends and her enemies in the class — we'd never had this sub before, by the way — how she had every right to fear for her life. She then capped it off by saying she was the teacher, and if we wanted to think in her classroom, well, there was the door, we were welcome to leave. I was never a popular child, as you can imagine, so I wasn't really expecting one of the popular kids and my sometimes bully to stand up collectively with everyone else, pull me to my feet, and have everyone walk out. Now, I mentioned above that we attended a small country school. There was no place to go, so we just sat in the hallway until the principal came down to chew us out for not being in class. The sub was gone by the start of the next period, and the principal taught the rest of our teachers' classes that day.
Oh, time for a food sin episode. Subway workers of Reddit, what's the grossest sandwich you've seen ordered/had to make? When I worked at Subway, there was a family that came in, the parents and their 2 sons. They would always order meatball footlongs and want all the veggies twice. You can never pack on enough lettuce either. You couldn't cut the dang thing. Good luck trying to smash it down enough to even wrap. That times 4 every time they came in, plus a ton of mayo. We used to do rock, paper, scissors in the back to see who had to deal with them. The guy had some kind of intellectual disability or something. He ordered a foot-long meatball sub with extra marinara and extra every other sauce, which at the time would have been yellow mustard, brown mustard, ranch, chipotle, light mayo, regular mayo, yes, both, and sweet onion. He had a companion with him who kept asking him, "Are you sure you want all that? That doesn't sound like it'll taste very good. Are you sure?" But he was not deterred. The companion came back up to me later to thank me and let me know he ate the entire thing and loved it. This mom and her kid would come into my store every Wednesday, and after the mom ordered something normal, the kid, who would always order himself, would ask for a, quote, plain sandwich. The first time I had to ask, but after that, every Wednesday, when I saw them walking up, I'd start working on that little guy's toasted bread and ketchup sandwich. Super gross sandwich order, but those 2 customers were always a bright spot in my week. Double salami and pretty much all the oregano in the house. No cheese, no sauce, no shame. Ex-Subway worker, there used to be a sandwich called The Feast, and we would ring a bell when someone ordered it. There was a guy who would order a feast, double meat, double cheese. The bread wouldn't even begin to fold. For reference, The Feast is what appears to be a sandwich with pepperoni, salami, turkey, ham, and maybe roast beef on it, with veggies. The sandwich itself looks like Pac-Man after he's about to devour one of the ghosts. And if you could imagine that gape of a hippo's jaw of bread being stuffed to the brim with meat, try adding double meat and double cheese to that, and you can see why it would be better off being an open-faced sandwich. My old boss took a trip to Hawaii to surf, rented a Jeep, and ordered enough $5 footlongs to last the week. That's all he ate all week, apparently. Stored them in the Jeep. No cooler, no refrigeration. All of those sandwiches were gross after a week in Hawaii temperatures. I don't know if they still do the seafood salad sandwich, but when I was a teenager, I had to prep that in the morning. It's a 5-pound bag of imitation crab and a gallon bag of mayonnaise, mixed with my gloved hands. The smell and texture was awful. Anyways, had an elderly gentleman come in on my Saturday shifts and get the seafood salad footlong, double meat with shredded cheese, toasted. Old guy tipped $1 every time. I used to go to this one Subway, and the artist really loved his job. He got to be stoned and make sandwiches. He knew people's orders. He was filled with fun Subway facts. He was the best part of going to Subway. I asked him what's the weirdest subs he has had to make. He told me that a lot of people from the Philippines ordered the seafood sub with marinara sauce on it, at least in that neighborhood. He thought it was super weird at first, and then after several people ordered it, he tried it himself and said he didn't hate it. It is time for this story to be told. When I was a stupid high school boy, my buddy Rob and I used to go to the same Subway at least a couple of times a week. There were 2 workers there, Mary and Roland, and whenever they transferred, we'd follow them to some other Subway, because they were nice to us and sometimes gave us deals. One day I went in there and said, "Roland, I bet you can't make me a sub that I can't eat." Roland goes in the back and comes back with 2 big freaking slabs of processed turkey. When you order a normal sub, that turkey is all sliced up. This was not sliced. It was just a brick of meat about 1.5 inches thick. He loaded it up with all the regular toppings, no screaming hot sauce or anything, and said, "There you go." Stupid high school boy me thought, this fool doesn't know who he's dealing with. I ask for an edible, and he gives me extra meat. 10 minutes and this thing is down the belly hatch. But a strange thing happens when you have to chew large portions of processed meat for a long time. You realize why they slice it up like that. It's because it's full of big, disgusting chunks of gristle, blobs of fat, probably a beak or two, whatever made it into the turkey blender before it was pressed into a can. I can't remember whether I puked. Stupid high school boys puke a lot. But I do remember that I didn't even finish 6 inches of that thing. God bless Roland, wherever he ended up. Not only did he win the bet, he made a sandwich that still haunts my dreams 25 years later. Never worked at Subway, but I can tell you how to make any sandwich absolutely disgusting. Order it on flatbread, but don't let them toast it or warm it up. The flatbread tastes like Satan's skin when it's cold. Hey there, if you subscribe to Am I the Genius and Am I the Jerk, I might not judge you for your horrible Subway order. Link is in the description, and remember to support the video by liking and leaving a comment. Thanks for watching! Obligatory, I don't work at Subway, but I do work at a place that serves subs. Had an order for a while back for a chicken finger sub with hot sauce, tuna, pickles, and double mayo. Felt like I was preparing for a reckless eating video. Edit, for those who have asked, I work at a locally owned pizzeria. Okay, this contextualizes things because in my head, if you work at a pizzeria, the pizzas are really the main focus, not the sandwiches. So you have a specific way you make the sandwiches, and there isn't really a lot of modifications you can do. What I think this person did is that he saw that the place served chicken fingers and subs and had all of these toppings that were put on the sandwich and said to himself, oh yeah, I want all of that. He was just making up his own crap for the sake of making up a sandwich. Like, I hate the idea of the sandwich, but you gotta admire the man's creativity and opportunism. Okay, check it. Dude comes in like he's never been to a Subway before, which, that's okay. I'm ready to help. But he also acts like he has never had nor heard of a sandwich before. He gets the honey oat footlong, and that is where the logic stops. This joker asks, what's good? And I tell him that I like the meatball marinara. He gets that, with extra marinara mind you, and before I can even ask him about his cheese choice, he points to the tuna and goes, ew, what's that? I tell him what it is, he takes a good minute to think, and then he's like, okay, I'll get that too. I pause for a second, trying to process what he is asking me. Let me tell you, I take the title, quote, sandwich artist seriously, and I did not feel like an artist while spreading pasty tuna onto a marinara-soaked honey oat loaf. I felt dirty. So to follow this nutball's train of logic, he has me extra toast it without cheese, take it out, and he says 2 words that shook me to my core. Honey mustard. I'm an honest man, I like to think. A good man if I'm being generous. But I cannot think that any god would make me suffer for helping craft this abomination. I squeeze the bottle and give him 3 thick lines of that tangy god sauce. He says more. I give him more. I close it with an audible squelch emitting from the sub. I wrap it up, and when I look up to accept his money, I see his face. I see the excitement of a child about to go on a roller coaster for the first time. The guy is giddy, practically electrified with glee. I give him his foot-long effigy to sin incarnate. He leaves the store, and I go in the back to slice bell peppers and try to forget. Meatballs, teriyaki chicken, and salsa with all the salad and all the sauces. No, he wasn't high, and he ordered it like 3 more times. For breakfast, egg whites, American, and shredded cheddar, a double portion of seafood salad, toasted, oil, no vinegar. Had a few people that would order a double meat tuna sub and then want a ton of mayo added to it. Those sandwiches were already half mayo to begin with. I felt fatter just touching the thing. Also, another store under the same owner would regularly get people wanting cookies added to their subs. I'm pretty sure I was told the reasoning was that they thought it would count as a topping so they wouldn't have to pay for the cookies. Yeah, like I'm gonna get my full order and then say, oh, stick a cookie in there too, and then pry it out while it's drenched in marinara sauce. Back when I used to work in a Subway, I've seen a couple gross ones. Here's a few I can remember. This obese guy would walk in a couple times a week, take the cold cut combo. He asks for a ton of lettuce, followed by the largest amount of mayonnaise you can imagine. He always emptied half the cup of mayo. It was probably more than enough mayo for 12 to 15 average customers. He then added a few other vegetables and was good to go. It always made me sick making him such a sandwich as I knew I was killing him. Then, I've seen two normal-looking persons take every single sauce on the menu, not like a very thin line or anything. Extra dosage of every sauce while looking at me to make sure I put enough of each. At Subway, you can ask to grill vegetables with your bread, cheese, or meat. I always grilled onions and peppers with mine for the flavor. Multiple people were doing this. Then this guy walks in and asks me to grill his sub at the complete end after asking for lettuce, pickles, and sauce on it. Edit, this got some attention. For those who are still passing through this, do not touch soup in a Subway or any other similar place. It's a pile of frozen junk, even if it tastes good. Edit 2. Just remembered one more. This guy ordered a wrap with 8 portions of bacon and 2 portions of steak. Cheese over the entire thing, no vegetables, and toasted. Yup, a toasted wrap. When I worked at Panera, a customer once ordered a tuna salad sandwich on a chocolate chip bagel. Not an artist, but was in line behind a guy. He got a chicken bacon ranch, double meat and cheese. Nothing weird yet. No toppings. Whatever, a lot of meat and cheese. All the sauces. What the heck? The Subway gal put a little line of each one on. Not good enough. He wanted it drenched in every sauce. He got a faint glob for each sauce, plus had them add marinara. When they tried to close the sandwich and cut it, it was oozing. He grabs it and sits down, basically slurping the thing. I was planning on eating there, but just couldn't. Got it to go and got the heck out of there. One of the grossest things I have ever seen. Okay, I was really curious about exactly what sauces are being put on the sandwiches, so I decided to look up the list of Subway sauces. People are putting oil, red wine vinegar, mayonnaise, mustard, honey mustard, buffalo sauce, sweet onion teriyaki, peppercorn ranch, Baja Chipotle, MVP Parmesan vinaigrette, and roasted garlic aioli on their sandwich at once. Some of these combinations I can get behind. I honestly put mayo and Baja Chipotle on mine because it makes this sort of spicy mayo mixture. It's really good. But if you get MVP Parmesan vinaigrette and red wine vinegar and buffalo sauce all at once, that's just gonna clash. We all know variety is the spice of life, but some people need to chill. Footlong Subway Club. I think double meat. Wanted extra cheese times 4 so they could have every single type of cheese on it. Every single vegetable, every sauce, and I mean every sauce. Even mayo plus light mayo together. Olive oil, vinegar, salt and pepper, oregano, Parmesan cheese. Not only was it disgusting, but it was a pain to actually wrap the thing up. Anytime someone ordered a tuna sub, it's basically vomit mixed with wall plaster. I had a guy order a meatball sub with extra meat, which in his case meant twice the meatballs. The juice alone from all those balls of meat made the bread like wet newspaper pretty much instantly. Way back in the day, I have no idea if this still exists, there was a rib sub, which was basically the roast chicken patty but in rib form, which was guaranteed to move through your bowels in no time. I worked during the Atkins craze, so anything to do with that still makes me shudder. Dude comes into my work every so often for a flatbread footlong, 1 egg white and 1 egg yellow. Add double meat tuna, toasted, and nothing else. I was a sandwich artist, thank you. Finally, a question I can answer that brings back the horrible memories of my soul-destroying time at Subway. There was this guy that I think was messing with me and the other girl there, but he ordered a foot-long wheat bread with every flavor of cheese we had on it, along with every condiment we had. Then, the man used a ketchup bottle he brought himself and used it all. His friends recorded him eating it, and I feel sick remembering it. This lady would come in every day and ask for a 6-inch honey oat, and made it very apparent that she wanted the bread soft. She had me put triple American cheese on it and 3 tomatoes and an ungodly amount of mayonnaise on it. That's it. Made me cringe watching her eat it. Hated that lady. I really hope that more people realize that mayonnaise is literally just like oil, eggs, and salt. And if you put way too much of it on a sandwich, you're just gonna taste oil, eggs, and salt. Like there's no other redeeming quality of that sandwich besides the fact that you put a gallon of mayonnaise on it. And it's not even like barbecue sauce, where the sauce is the point of barbecue. You may as well be eating mayonnaise out the jar with a spoon at that point. Late to the party, but this is hands down the worst sandwich I ever made. Dude comes in, orders a 6-inch cold cut, white bread. As I'm cutting the bread, he asks for mayo on both sides before the meat, so I do the old back and forth both sides. He looks at me and says, "Not enough, man. I want like an inch on both sides." I used about a half bottle of mayo on that sandwich, put the meat on, and closed it up. He told me at the end that he lets it sit in the fridge for 3 days before he eats it. Nope. No way. If I let fast food sit in my fridge for more than a day, it gets inedible. Mans is out here marinating his meat in mayonnaise. Like, what are you people doing? Stop putting 1 billion pounds of mayonnaise on your sandwiches. I am begging you. Not Subway, but in high school, I worked at Hoagie Yogi, which does sandwiches and teriyaki bowls. I had a teenage girl come in and ask if I could make a foot-long pickle sandwich. So I took a small handful of pickles and spread them out over the bread. "Can I have more?" she asked. I took another, slightly larger handful of pickles and spread them over the bread. "Can I have more?" she asked again. I dug into the bin with both hands and spread 2 heaping piles of pickles across the bread, which was now soaking in vinegar. "Is that enough?" I asked. I thought I was calling her bluff. "Yeah, that's good." I folded the sandwich down as best I could. The pickles were stacked too high. I rang her up for a veggie sandwich, watched her take it to a table, and sit down to eat the whole thing. The bread was dark and soggy. Any pickles that fell out, she was quick to scoop up. It was gross, but fascinating at the same time. Okay, YouTube comments, hear me out on this one. Do you know somebody who is obsessed with pickles? And bonus points if it's specifically white girls who are obsessed with pickles. And I don't mean to exclude anybody else from that conversation. I just mean that white girls, specifically, are the demographic that's almost targeted to be obsessed with pickles. Am I the only one who's noticed this phenomenon, or am I just going crazy? Not a Subway worker, but ordered enough weird sandwiches to be rightfully judged. My brother and I used to have this ongoing competition where we would order the grossest sandwiches and see who could actually eat the most of it. Whoever ate the least had to pay for both sandwiches the next time we came to Subway. The grossest sandwich I ever ordered was a foot-long with that weird artificial fish and mayo stuff, spinach, olives, tomatoes, bacon, avocado, honey mustard, and barbecue sauce. To be honest, it was actually pretty good despite the texture, so I won that competition. I worked in Northwest Iowa, very agricultural. Lots of cold-cut trio on white bread with a crap ton of mayo, and that's it. I hated making it. I did not graduate from the Art Academy of Subway sandwiches to unwrap turkey plastic and splooge mayo up and down the block. I once had to make someone a black olive sandwich. Like, 3 handfuls of only black olive on Italian bread with extra olive juice. We had a guy who ordered the seafood, gross in his own right, and then would ask for black pepper. He would then say, "Put pepper on until I say stop." He would let you shake on pepper for a good 15 to 30 seconds. The sub was just a pile of mayo and soot. Surprised I never sneezed. Maybe that's what he wanted. I worked at a sub shop in Arizona, and this wasn't really gross, just peculiar. A girl would come in every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday and order a 16-inch sub with all the white cheese except yellow, and a, quote, 16-inch sub with 4 orders of bacon and no bread. I thought she was joking when she first came in, but I was subsequently reprimanded by the supervisor for laughing. Reverse. My friend used to work at a chain sub shop, and I love mayo. To screw with him, I would always just ask for unreasonable amounts of mayo on my stuff, because he thinks it's gross. He was about to ship out to the military, so before he left, I had to make me a meatball sub, but with no red sauce. All the red sauce had to be replaced with mayonnaise. He cringed, I ate it. It was a good day. In this thread, mayo. In fact, take a shot every time you hear the word mayo. I think you'll have less alcohol in you than these people have mayo in their systems at all times. Late to the party, but I've seen a Subway order that's shaken me to the core, and if I can spread the story to just one person, it's worth it. A lady in front of me orders a salad. So far, so good. Nothing to worry about. Then she says she would like it plain. The worker asks what she would like on her salad. She doesn't want lettuce, onions, or spinach. She orders 1 slice of ham in the middle of the plastic bowl, then she asks for pickles. The The worker puts a handful on, but the lady wants more. I'm perplexed in line behind her, and it's starting to get hard to keep a straight face. The worker piles on another 2 full handfuls of pickles on. The lady pipes up, "Can I just get a little more?" The worker gives her a wary eye but submits and adds 1 final handful to her bowl. She proceeds to pay, her final order being 1 slice of ham and the remainder of the bowl filled with pickles. I'm sorry, is this defined as plain? Like, if you say you want your salad plain, wouldn't that just be lettuce? If it's just lettuce, that's fine. I won't judge you for being boring or basic, but I will judge you for calling your ham and pickle bowl a salad. Go to the store and get a jar of Vlasic pickles and a tub of mayo and a 6-pack of Oscar Mayer lunch meat, and you can make your own sandwich for less money and time that you would spend going to Subway and having it done for you. And the best part is that you can eat the rest of the tub of mayo, eat the rest of the jar of pickles, you can even drink the pickle juice for all I care. Just stop torturing these poor Subway employees, please!
Those of you who don't have a degree and love your job, what do? I walk dogs. Everyone at work is always super stoked to see me and I never go home angry. Already a strong start. I drive a school bus and my elementary school kids are my favorite part of the day. I make $14 an hour and work 2.5 hours at a time and get paid for 6 hours a day unless I do a field trip or something. And most of the time, those are fun as hell. I get to go to the zoo, the science center. I went to a Cardinals game. I went to a swimming competition and got to stay in a nice hotel for a weekend getting paid the entire time. The only thing I would change about my job are the buttholes I have to share the road with. I'm a web developer. I dropped out of college to move home and take care of my mom. Motorcycle accident, permanent severe brain damage. I couldn't leave home. I had to be with my mom, so I did what I used to do for fun. PHP. I hated PHP though, so I researched what the most semantic and elegant solution to web development was. The research led me to develop with Python and Django. I made a website, Good Guy Gamers, that wasn't successful at all. It was way too much work for one person. I'm a terrible designer and marketer, but I put everything I had into making the site have cool, unique features and demonstrate my skill. It worked. I landed a job where I work near full-time for a great company for $40 an hour, and I have a huge say in what happens. I can work for 3 hours a day if I'm feeling awful or can't focus for some reason, or I can work 12 hours a day busting my butt on an exciting problem. The main point is I found what I'm passionate about, and I found a company that truly appreciates what I can do. Further, they appreciate what I could become with more experience. Great rule when looking for a job: look for a place with upward momentum and a workplace that actively wants to see you improve. I'm an educator at a small zoo. Not very common in the zoo community to work without a degree, but I was lucky to be grandfathered in. I started as a temporary worker, went to full-time animal care, and worked my way up to lead keeper. Education was a normal part of my keeper job anyway, so I jumped at the chance to do that full-time. I'm at the 1-year mark now, and I'm crazy about it. Teaching people about wildlife and habitat conservation while handling awesome animals is very rewarding. That does sound pretty cool. Construction. Winters are tough, but fresh air is a blessing.
Bartender, the parties, the stories, and the money to be made.
I'm a professional farrier. I've only been at it a few months, went to farrier school straight out of high school, but I love it, and I wouldn't change a thing. Though a lot of people are surprised when an 18-year-old girl shows up and manhandles their stubborn stallions and nags. I'd heard the name farrier, but I didn't know what it was until I just read this. I'm an air traffic controller, 23 years old, and at any given moment I have hundreds of human beings on my screen. For the most part, pilots do their thing and we do ours. While I wish to pursue a business degree, I'm not sure I would trade this job for anything. Excellent income, excellent benefits, and the fact that every day is slightly different than the last is pretty cool. I feel like I'm gonna see some kind of bot story or something at some point where it's like, do this, join this, we need you. Kennel attendant for the cat building of a no-kill shelter. Every shift starts at 7 a.m. Depending on the shift, I scrub vomit, clean dusty litter paw prints off everything, clean cage units, change out bedding, dump hundreds of pounds of dirty cat litter, and lug hundreds of pounds of clean bagged litter, scrub 50-some dirty litter boxes. It's by far the most physical labor-intensive job I've ever had, and by far my favorite job I've ever had. I'm part-time, the pay is not enough to support myself, but by God, I love it. For reference, I'm 25, 1 year of community college, and 1 year of awful degree mill art school under my belt. I I live in a fantasy world where how successful I see myself is dependent on how happy I am, I'm looking for a second part-time job and also procrastinating getting serious about a sketch pet portrait business. I'm a pretty simple girl who loves animals and wants to make a positive difference in the world. I wish you luck, I support you, but I will remain steadfastly pessimistic. I kid. Of course. Honestly, I enjoy the outlook on this young woman. I think it's good to feel like needed, wanted, or feel like you're at your station in life, what you're meant to be doing, or at least something that makes you happy, and that's all that really matters, I'm a 911 dispatcher. High school diploma is all that is required. I actually do have a degree in women's studies, but it in no way helped me get the job. The thing that got me the job was customer service experience. I worked at an answering service for 2 years before this. My job is fantastic. I work 12-hour shifts and only work 15 days a month. 1 week I work Monday to Tuesday, then Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays. The next week I only work Wednesday and Thursday. I get a 3-day weekend every other week. The work is interesting, but there's also loads of downtime in which we're allowed to browse the internet or read. There's no dress code, although pajamas are gently discouraged. Most importantly, you really do get to help people, so you leave at the end of your shift feeling like you've done something good for your community. It's fantastic. I work as a bus driver for people with disabilities. I love what I do because I feel like I'm giving back a little part of life these people had taken from them for whatever reason. It is very fulfilling. I love my clients. Mostly. I actually know quite a few people who worked with disabled people. Like, obviously I've heard good sides of it, and then I've heard absolute horror stories about the people who do not behave very well and some messed up stuff. I'm a welder or fabricator. It's almost always a one-man operation in my shop, which is good for me as a total introvert. I only get help moving and installing the really heavy pieces. I get to make custom steel pieces for custom houses. It feels great when the homeowner says I built all their favorite parts of their house, mostly handrails, furniture, doors, stairs, and all little odds and ends a modern house needs. I also get to do a little woodworking when it's needed. I'm a compliance analyst for a health insurance company. I started out as a clerk for my department and worked my way up to where I am now within 2 years. So now I'm responsible for making sure we're following federal regulations, then perform audits on the work we do in addition to assisting my manager with changes that need to take place. It's an amazing job. I love the company and my manager, and I'm lucky to know that I'm still not done moving up within the company with the growth we're experiencing. I'm a taxidermist. I love my job. It takes my 2 favorite classes from high school and smushed them together, biology and art. I also find taxidermy morbidly fascinating. I mean, has anyone ever seen that thing where it's I think a guy tried to taxidermy a lion but had never seen a lion before, so he had the skin and everything, and instead of making it look like a lion, it looked like one of those really bad paintings of what people thought a lion looked like by second-hand descriptions. If you haven't seen it, type in bad taxidermy lion, it looks ridiculous. But then look up medieval lion painting and you will know the one. I roughneck on a drilling rig, make great money, $2,500 a week, and I work only 2 weeks a month and 6 months out of the year. Practically buy whatever I want, whenever I want. There's a lot of fights between the men out here, but if you can get past that and do your job right, you're pretty much your own man out here. I myself have considered working on an oil rig at one time or another when things get stressful. I'm I hate it here, but I also need to make money. Senior network penetration tester and security researcher. I've wanted to do this stuff since I was 10 and tinkered with everything since then. Paycheck or not, I love it. I get to travel all over, hack into Fortune 500s and not get in trouble, not that they usually catch me, and meet some amazing people. I wouldn't trade it for anything. Musician. I perform and record my own songs with some of my best friends in the world, and sometimes these crazy high schools pay me to arrange crappy pop music into fun choral pop music for their show choirs. I'd live in a box to keep doing this if needed. I work at Disney World, and although there are good and bad days, there is nothing that compares to the environment. You meet some amazing people and see some crazy things. For every one negative experience, there are 1,000 positive experiences. You can work your way up, or you can stay where you love working. They give you a lot of chances to improve after making a mistake and opportunities opportunities to further yourself. There will always be people who can only see the negatives, but they don't really understand that the magic is making someone else's day, even if it means sacrificing your own. Sounds like a bunch of propaganda to me. I'm joking. I actually went to Disneyland a while ago, and I had a blast. Everyone was really lovely. The immersion, that Disney magic, I totally felt it. I had a great time. A little late to the conversation, but I work at a dog boarding facility that has it all. Grooming, daycare, boarding, obviously, self-service baths, fostering and rescue and adoption, the whole shebang. It's really fun to work with all of the different personalities and breeds of dogs, and can also be challenging learning how to work around behavior, trust issues that some of them come in with. It can be tiring, though the 4-hour shifts I work here leave me way more tired than the 8-hour shifts I used to work in retail. But in the end, it is totally worth being with dogs all day. The only issue I have with where I work are some of my co-workers, but thankfully management has a good head on their shoulders. Otherwise, I love where I work, and I hope to put in many more years. No qualifications, professional musician for 30 years. Wouldn't trade the worst year of being a pro muso for anything else. I love it that much. I have zero job security, no benefits apart from free alcohol, late nights, and sometimes recording sessions are booked early the following day. Long time away from home, traveling all the time, still wouldn't be doing anything else. That is the issue with not working for an almighty corporation or just being self-employed in general. You don't really know where your next paycheck's going to be coming from. I'm a personal shopper. I literally walk around a store all day collecting groceries to be delivered to people who are too rich and busy to do their own shopping. It's a pretty sweet gig, and being able to see how the other half lives makes me feel happy that I'm not a rich douche, and reassures me that my financial priorities are intact. You didn't have time to buy a $2 loaf of bread and are going to pay $20 to have it delivered to your door? Really? I'm an event manager for an energy company in Texas. I get to tell people what to do, manage a $500,000 budget, and travel some. No degree. Experience matters most. Make $60K a year and earn almost twice what my wife with a master's makes. Pizza delivery driver. Make great tips and get to jam to music while on the way to deliveries, and also everyone at work, even the managers, smoke tons of devil's lettuce. I work in the retention department for a cable company. I take 30 to 40 calls a day from people calling to cancel their cable. I usually take them out of it. I often slash their bills. I sometimes give them something for free, and every once in a while they really do cancel. Every time they're mad or unhappy when the call starts, and every time at the end of the call, they're satisfied. It isn't a very easy job, but it is one that pays me pretty well. And I get free cable. I think that South Park episode has ruined me, the one where like the cable people or like the TV people are just like, oh, you want to cancel your package? Really? I play video games for a living. More specifically, I live stream via Redacted so people can see what I play as I do my best to entertain them. My fans make it the best job in the world. I checked out the link to their Twitch channel and they were taken off apparently for violations, but as far as I know about Twitch, it's very easy to get kicked off Twitch. Unless, of course, you're one of the golden boys or chosen ones that they decide can get away with whatever they want. Digital compositing in an animation studio. There's deadlines, sure, and it can get pretty stressful, but I love it. VP of operations for a steel foundry. I started working at the foundry my dad worked at out of high school just to make some money and never left the industry. I've spent the last 14 years of my life doing some really hard, dirty jobs, moving across the country, one foundry at a time, and learning all sorts of cool stuff. I started getting sent to Six Sigma training, then TPS. Now, I'm pretty much my own boss, and I live where I've always wanted to live. Funny how things work out. I am a 35-year-old and I do CAD work for computer chips. In fact, I manage a team of over 10 people. Most have bachelor's or master electrical engineering degrees. I've been in the industry and doing this job since I was 19. I married my pregnant girlfriend when I was 18. My son is smart, respectful, and sarcastic. My daughter is smart, hardworking, and witty. I could not imagine a better life. I live in Seoul, Korea. My job is to commentate Korean professional gamers playing high-level games, usually StarCraft 2. I'm essentially a sports broadcaster for esports, and I do it abroad. It's a really fun job, and I don't regret for a second moving over here. My life changed when I got here, and it just keeps getting better. I'd never heard of StarCraft until StarCraft 2 came out, and I gotta say, I'm really surprised by that game's longevity. I sit in back of helicopter and fly around Bavaria all day, making sure we don't crash into stuff. I make about $30,000 a year, have no bills, and a house provided for me. Well, ain't some people just luckier than others? Construction superintendent. No day is the same and always meeting new people. Have to be on your toes all the time. Love the challenge. A degree doesn't guarantee the ability to do this job. Experience, multitasking, and problem-solving skills are must-have qualities. I'm an IT consultant and infrastructure architect architect for some of the most impactful IT environments in the country today. I have a great deal of satisfaction when I debate, convince, and badger people into doing things the right way to ensure that millions of people have their information protected and the environment is stable. Sitting down with what can't even be called a design and throwing out, then designing, implementing, and integrating everything from scratch is incredibly satisfying. And the working relationship I have with the team that all work together to make this happen is just, it's great. Still need to get paid more though. I am currently an arborist, tree climber, or tree trimmer. It's a fun job that is physically and mentally challenging. I also used to fight wildland fires, forest fires, with the US Forest Service. I was a member of an elite firefighting crew called a hotshot crew. It was a great job that I absolutely loved, but being gone almost all summer is difficult as a husband and father. Well, thank you for your service, and I have also played with the idea of being an arborist at one point. It's weird how many of these jobs have come up that I've even looked into. I am a power lineman. I climb power poles when applicable, bring electricity to where it is needed, put my crew on the moon, there wouldn't be a dark side. I am a cook at the Old Faithful Inn in Yellowstone National Park. A lot of these stories are like 10 years old. I do wonder if a lot of these people are still doing the same job, or maybe they moved on to even greener pastures that they enjoy even more. I'm a rope access technician for an inspection company. I love my job. I get to climb and rappel bridges, dams, roller coasters, refineries, buildings, and wind turbines to perform inspections, maintenance, and various tasks at height. Starting out pay was so well, I couldn't believe I didn't need a degree to do this. I have inspection certifications now that pretty much set me up for a career that is in very high demand. Rope access is exploding in this industry. It is such a fun job, I don't see why everyone isn't doing it. 3 words, buddy. Fear of heights. That's not referring to me. I am fine with heights. I used to be terrified of them though when I was a kid. I own and operate a cocktail lounge and restaurant. Started as a bartender, then manager, then GM. I eventually saved up to buy my first bar, eventually turned it into 4. I'm in my 40s and make more money than pretty much all my friends, a good 6-figure income. It was a long, hard road, but I'm set more or less. I could sell the lot and retire now, no worries. I love my career. It was a wonderful and hard road filled with focus, determination, and failure. It then eventually led to success. Degrees are extremely important, of course, but it doesn't guarantee success. You're limited to your own motivation and determination. Well, at least it seems that way to me. I do software support and a little development for a very large software company. I also occasionally visit custom sites to help them implement new versions of our stuff or whatever. However, I got very lucky getting this job. I was in university as a co-op student, and I took work term at a medium-sized software company. Worked there, loved it. They asked me to come back for a second term. In the middle of that one, my boss just offered me a full-time contract at $52K. At the time, I was broke and I absolutely hated my program, chemical engineering. So I took the job thinking I'd do it for a couple of years to get some savings to go back to school. That was almost 7 years ago. When I'm dealing with reasonable customers, the work is great. I solve puzzles. The only stuff I don't like dealing with is the political BS, i.e. our rules say that we shouldn't be on the phone with someone to hold their hand through very well documented procedures. But this customer sent an angry email to a manager, so we'll bend over backwards for them. I hate the squeaky wheels. However, there are tons of perks. For starters, I work from home. To not have to deal with rush hour traffic and be able to make my own lunch in my own kitchen has been very healthy for me. Secondly, I get paid a pretty good amount, $70K a year, currently with 1 to 2 raises a year and bonuses. I also get to write off parts of my electric and internet bills, among other things. Not to mention, I can work anywhere I want as long as I have a decent internet connection and I'm online during the hours I'm supposed to be online. This means I can go visit family or whatever without having to take a vacation. It's a pretty good gig. I write fiction online and draw donations from my readers for a livable wage. Writing like I do, putting up installments on a regular basis, it fixes many of the problems with writing. With regular writing, it's a lonely business. You don't get feedback or see if it'll take until it's done, and you don't get the money until it's done and successful. What I'm doing, I get regular comments. I can chat with my readers. I can shape the narrative if feedback indicates it's necessary. I do write my stories. Reader feedback can inform it, but it's not a choose-your-own-adventure. It helps that it's sort of marketing and social media on its own too. I finished my first story, a 26-book epic written over 2.5 years, and publishers, editors, startups, and agents and a small video game company have expressed interest in working with me. I have a wealth of options now, a large-ish audience of 12,000 plus readers at the height of my last story. That's very attractive to outside parties, possible Kickstarters, self-publishing, traditional publishing, or something in between. Generally speaking, I'm pretty stoked to get up in the morning these these days. It's nerve-wracking at times, those 15 to 20 minutes after my chapter goes live and before the first comment comes in, and there are ups and downs, but I love what I'm doing. Well, that just sounds like a dream. I love writing personally. I don't have that much confidence in my entire ability to write, like setting up areas or dialogue and whatnot, but I do have some concepts and ideas that I think are absolute gold, and I would like to get out there someday, so this just sounds cool. I'm a professional audio and lighting technician for live events, raves, rock shows, corporate meetings, politician rallies, fundraisers, sporting events, presidents, past and present, you name it, I've done it. I'm a broadcast engineer. There isn't a school for what we do. You just start from the bottom as a wireman and work your way up. You earn the right to be called an engineer, regardless of your education. When you watch a live televised event, say the Super Bowl or Academy Awards, there are usually a team of people making sure that all the cameras, audio, and video equipment on site is functioning. I'm one of those guys. Stress level is very high, but the skills and relationships you develop, it's worth it. Honestly, it's the perfect job for a single person, as you'll spend more time on a plane than anywhere else, but the scenery changes every day, and the pay at my company is the best in the industry. For the record, I am sorry if some of you get frustrated when I decide to change voice randomly, but sometimes I get bored just reading in the same voice. Pilot, I get to travel the world, the pay is crap, and you work a ton. I can't imagine doing anything else. I flew a plane once. It's very expensive to get even an hour-long lesson on a plane. It's crazy. Like getting your pilot's license, I believe, you need at least 60 hours in the air before you can move on to more stuff. I'm a butcher. It's kind of cool seeing all the cuts of meat you can get out of one section of an animal. Also being able to take a 1,000-pound animal and turn it into something people can pick up at the store and throw in a pan for dinner is awesome. And now you're making me hungry.
What's a sensation that you're unsure if other people experience? Sometimes when I'm breathing, as I often do, I get this sharp feeling in my chest that I can only describe as feeling like something gets caught in my chest. Usually a few painful, deep breaths will make it go away. I've told my doctors, and they say they've never heard of anything like that before. So, I'm not a doctor, but WebMD tells me that this is a telltale symptom of precordial catch syndrome, which is described as a sharp pain in the left side of your chest near your heart. It's not a serious condition, but it does feel like you're getting stabbed in the chest, which is, concerning. They typically get worse with breathing, and they occur within a small area, and the pain is not due to the heart. So if you think you're having a heart attack because your chest hurts, maybe it's just precordial catch syndrome. Sometimes I get the feeling in the back of my neck accompanied by a weird sound, kind of like the sound of bubbles in sparkling water. It doesn't really bother me since it lasts less than a second, but I wish I could describe what it actually sounds like. This thread is full of people having mysterious things finally explained to them, so I'm gonna give it a shot. My eyelashes hurt, specifically the follicles. It's the same kind of pain like when you have a loose tooth, and it actually does seem to happen when the eyelash is, quote, loose. Like, it's twisted around and pointing the wrong way. I have yet to meet anyone else who experiences this. My doctor's only suggestion was to start washing my eyes daily with baby shampoo, and it's reduced it substantially, but not completely. It sucks. It's more of a lack of sensation than anything else, I guess, but maybe every few months, I get this feeling that everything is hollow and far away, like anything I want to do is meaningless. Anything I hear people say sounds like an echo, and even the thoughts in my head sound emotionless and distant. It usually passes after 5 minutes, but I've stopped asking my friends whether they know that feeling because of the looks I get. Sounds like ennui to me. The state of feeling disinterested in one's surroundings, having nothing to do, or feeling that life is dull. Sometimes I get sudden weird feelings of, I absolutely cannot be here in this place. This place is wrong. It's this intense sensation/thought that happens randomly. No, there's no apparent danger, just a weird feeling or sensation of absolute, I can't be here, this is wrong, I can't be here, I need to not be here. I don't have intense social anxiety or fear of public places or anything like that. It's happened since I was little. Not sure what triggers it, and it goes away after a few minutes. I get panic attacks pretty often, and that sounds like it to me. It's not for the same reason, like I don't get anxious in public spaces. It's mostly an internal thing, but panic attacks can happen for any reason at any time. I don't know how to describe it other than to say I can flex something inside my ears and it creates this deep rumbling sound in my head. Edit, just woke up and holy heck, RIP inbox. I've been able to do this as long as I can remember. When I was a kid, I used to pretend that doing this activated my latent psychic abilities. I actually can do this too, and it turns out that there's a subreddit called r/earrumblers assemble. YouTube comments, if you're an ear rumbler, get in there and tell me all about it. I once saw a patient that had visual snow, which is a rare visual disorder where you see constant static/snow patterns over your normal vision. She spent most of her life thinking it was normal, but it didn't get in the way of her normal day-to-day life, which is a relief. Just to clarify, visual snow needs to be constant and will usually have other symptoms like visual trailing, association with migraines, or problems with night vision as I understand it. It can also affect one's quality of life, so if you just experience it at night, then it is likely just cone and rod, quote, noise, which is completely normal. If you see it only when looking at blue skies, etc., then that is called blue field entoptic phenomenon, which someone kindly posted below, and this can be associated with visual snow as well. If you believe you have visual snow, please see a doctor or optometrist and advise them that you think you may have a condition that is called visual snow. Just to add, my patient believed this to be normal as one of her family members also experienced it, and also believed it to be normal. But vision is a funny thing, and I guess we never really have discussions about what we see. Sometimes when I'm trying to sleep, my hands feel too large and my body feels all out of proportion. I can't get comfortable, and I have to turn on the lights and look at my hands for a bit for it to go away. I know that sounds weird, but it's the only way I can describe it. Bizarre. Edit. I woke up this morning with my inbox exploding, and I'm so glad that I'm not the only one here. And I love Pink Floyd, and I can't believe I didn't make the comfortably numb connection to Alice in Wonderland syndrome until now. I'm listening to it as I type this. When I hear someone in a public place describe their day or talk about something very specific to their life, I get an overwhelming sense of detachment from the world. The first thought that goes through my mind is, I'll never know anything about this person's life, and they are sitting 3 feet away from me. And I zone out for a few seconds. I think sonder is the term for this, from the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows. Noun, the realization that each random passerby is living a life as vivid and complex as your own, populated with their own ambitions, friends, routines, worries, and inherited craziness. An epic story that continues invisibly around you like an anthill sprawling deep underground, with elaborate passageways to thousands of other lives that you'll never know existed, in which you might appear only once, as an extra sipping coffee in the background, as a blur of traffic passing on the highway, as a lighted window at dusk. My sister and I call it tickle thumb, but it's when you're laughing too much and try to pick something up or press something with your finger and thumb but have no strength. Of course, it makes us laugh harder and prolong the tickle thumb. Good luck trying to explain it to someone who doesn't know it, though. I see unfathomably large objects sometimes when I close my eyes to go to sleep. They're random shapes, but usually a big sphere. They're so large it's overwhelming, but I've kind of learned to keep my eyes closed and let them appear instead of opening my eyes to make them disappear. Edit. Whoa. The first time I remember experiencing this was when I was a kid and sick with an ear infection. I was half awake and having nightmares. It still happens to me now. I'm 25, but I haven't found the quote trigger. Last time it happened, I was drunk. That everyone is always playing this game that they won't snap out of. Instead of just being themselves and saying what they feel, they act like they're in a play or in a chess game or something. And there's always this weird layer of separation between who they actually are and what they're allowing you to interface with. Even with people I feel close to, I've tried to have conversations about this and it still feels like they just refuse to snap out of it. I can't tell if other people are also acutely aware of a lack of candidness in everyone around them all the time, and they also get tired of it but play along because everyone else is, or if people are just really like that. I think a lot about what people are like when they're alone, and what exactly the differences are between that person and the person I get to interact with. It's strange to me that even with a really candid conversation about it, and with what seems like open acknowledgement of the phenomena by the person I'm talking to, they still don't feel truly present. There are only a few people I've ever met in my life who I actually felt were completely genuine without any facade. So I wonder if other people have noticed that, or if I'm just delusional. Hey, hope you're enjoying the video. Remember to drop a like and leave a comment, and subscribe to Am I the Genius and Am I the Jerk, linked in the description below. Thanks for watching. Whenever I'm in a room where it's mostly dark, but there is some light, and I focus on whatever, ground, wall, nothing, my eyes start to darken the entire room until I basically have the view of my eyes closed, but my eyes are open. Edit. Okay, so I can see a lot of other people experience this. One thing though is the fact that the outline of objects glows really high at some point. Sometimes it's not even objects. My eyes would focus on whatever, and when it's dark, it starts, quote, glowing in phases, as in the ground gets really bright and then dims back down. Repeat. I get shooting pains on both sides of my lower jaw, under my ears, when I start eating anything sweet. The only other person I know who gets it is my dad, so it must be genetic. That could be a partial subluxation of the sublingual salivary gland and also the submandibular salivary gland that flex and swell when you juice your mouth way too quickly with saliva and spit for digestion. I assume it's when you've not had anything to eat for a while? I can't believe I read all that medical stuff on my first take. Sometimes when I'm lying down, I feel as though my whole body is swinging from side to side really quickly. When I'm tired, I can kind of control it, but no one ever knows what I'm talking about. Hey, I get this, and I actually got diagnosed. It might not be the exact same, but I have benign paroxysmal positional vertigo. It's basically vertigo induced from lying in a certain position. For some people, it could be very intense. It actually stops me from sleeping sometimes. Usually I can stop it by focusing really hard or by opening my eyes and looking at something. Mine is caused by crystals that developed in the balance part of my ear. You have this fluid, and basically this tells your brain how your body is oriented. That's why if you spin around a lot, you get dizzy. So these crystals can become dislodged and start swirling around, causing your brain to think you're spinning. If people are struggling with this, there's a specific set of movements you can do that is supposed to stop it. It happens pretty rarely, but I'll be laying down somewhere, and then I start getting this feeling of combined sleepiness/warmth that seems to make everything seem better and lets me appreciate the smaller things, like how soft the thing I'm laying on is, or how the sun is peeking through the window, or how nice it is to just exist. It doesn't last very long, and it only happens when I haven't been doing or thinking about stressful things in a while. Edit, it isn't just happiness. It's like advanced happiness. I don't know, it's hard to describe now. About once a month, I get this really weird mental feeling. It's really hard to explain, but I guess it's almost as if everything has become too real? Like life before was a video game I was playing or in, and now that game is real. Coupled with not feeling emotions like I think I should, and I worry sometimes. I have that too. Sometimes I'm doing some light chore, cleaning a table, brushing teeth, taking a quick shower, etc., and I, quote, snap awake for a brief moment, especially if I'm looking at a mirror. It's bizarre. It's like turning off autopilot. This is me. I'm alive. I breathe and eat. Someone birthed me. I've changed lives with my very existence. I have a body that responds to my actions to the point where I don't even notice it. People I've known have died of natural causes, among those lines. Then I just forget about it. It's happened less than a dozen times in my life. Sounds like depersonalization, derealization. I have it too. It's scary. I regularly feel like I'm just faking my way through life, that all my supposed job skills aren't really there, and I've just been lucky that I haven't been caught out yet. I'm fairly sure this isn't true, but I can't help but feel it. That's what we call imposter syndrome, baby. As a creative, I feel this. It really can feel like you're just faking your way through everything, making videos, drawing, anything like that, and thinking that it's just not good enough. Obviously, it's not true, as people will gladly tell you that the things you're making are great, and there is genuine work and technique being put in. But it feels like it's for nothing. It's always that strive for perfection. I physically feel pain whenever I hear silverware being moved around and clinking together. Like, I'd literally prefer to leave the room than hear that. Nothing else makes me feel this way, but it makes me be careful when I or anyone around me unloads or loads a dishwasher. Sounds like misophonia to me. By concentrating on the area just behind my forehead, I can get a wave of sensation pulsating from that spot backwards through my head and to the base of my neck. The longer I concentrate, the more intense it can get. I know one other person who has described the same thing. I'd love to hear of others with this and if they have explored it much. Also, if I shine really bright lights straight onto my closed eyelids, I feel a little bit of inexplicable joy and clarity. Edit, not ear rumble/tensor tympani. I have no auditory sensations with it, and the sensation emanates particularly from my forehead. Pretty sure not ASMR, based on descriptions of it and the fact that there is nothing else that causes the sensation to occur for me. Also not free zone, because, well, I can do that voluntary too, and I know the difference. That falling feeling you get sometimes when you're laying in bed, then you flail around a little bit trying to stop yourself. Called a hypnic jerk. As I understand it, it happens when your body is falling asleep but your mind is still awake, and the feeling of falling unconscious triggers a flight or fight response. When I see a bus pass or when I'm on a train and get to my station, I always think about getting on that bus or staying on the train and seeing how far I can go. Just not tell anyone, not answer the phone, not show up to work, and keep going. Sometimes, relatively rarely, I will go into the third person for just a moment. I will see myself doing whatever I'm doing for no more than a second as if I was playing a video game. I know it's not 100% synced up though because I fell down the stairs the last time it happened. Oftentimes, if I've been laying down for a prolonged period of time, when I stand up really quickly, I'll feel a head rush and then go totally blind for around 5 seconds. I've had people relate with the head rush, but I have yet to find someone who has experienced the sudden blindness too. If I've been sitting around for a few days, I sometimes get an uncomfortable feeling in my muscles, leg muscles especially. There's a burning restlessness that drives me to get up off my butt and at least move around some. It doesn't matter how lazy I might prefer to be. My body says I've got to get up and move. I've never heard anyone else talk about the sensation, and I'd like to know what it's called. Restless leg syndrome. I get it when my body wants to go to bed, actually. Makes me get up off the couch and go to sleep. Maybe not a sensation so much, but for some reason, music can make me really emotional. For some reason, sometimes I'll be singing along to a song, even something funny like a parody, and I won't be able to get through it without choking up. If it was just really sad songs, I could understand, but like I said, it'll even happen with like Weird Al songs. I mean, thinking about how long it must have taken to get that take on Hardware Store where he's listing out all of the things that they have at the hardware store, I'd probably cry too. Some advertisements make me deeply sad, especially for irrelevant products like soaps or razors. It's all the meaningless promotions on the packaging to make the products seem more appealing. Maybe it's all the work I know was put into something that 99.9% of people are never going to read. I don't know. It's happened to me for as long as I can remember. This happens every so often with myself, but I feel like I'm just reliving my life through memories. It's like I'm telling someone the story of my life and I'm recounting all of it. It's a weird but interesting sensation. I think this is pretty common, but I haven't seen it mentioned yet. While driving, sometimes I'll have the urge to ram the car in front of me and/or swerve into oncoming traffic. It's not an urge to off myself, just an inexplicable craving of wanting to smash into something. I kind of equate this to the feeling of wanting to jump when near the edge of a steep cliff, which I know is a relatively common phenomenon. Yeah, this is called Call of the Void, or more commonly, intrusive thoughts. Which, by the way, small rant, I never liked how people said that they let their intrusive thoughts win when it comes to something as mundane as like sticking a hot dog in between 2 slices of bread instead of a bun. No, intrusive thoughts are about stabbing your mom with a knife while you're preparing dinner together, or something akin to that. It's intrusive because it's unwarranted and can make you feel like an awful person just for thinking it. But they're not always based on some Freudian desire to go goblin mode. They're just your brain thinking a little too much. It's really nothing to worry about. After a 24-hour alcohol bender, during the hangover, I'll hear pitches about a quarter step sharper than they really are. I have absolute pitch, and am now sober following a gnarly ride with alcohol. Of all the hangover systems I got, quote, the sharps were the most unsettling. Dehydration of your inner ear fluid would be my guess. Changes the shape of the ear canal until your body can replenish it, so everything would sound different. This has actually happened to me before. I don't have perfect pitch or absolute pitch or anything like that, but I think one time I was either sick or I just woke up and my ear was feeling pretty off. It's like whenever I would whistle, I would hear like multiple tones over each other. It's like I was harmonizing with myself, but in the worst way possible. And listening to music sucked because it was like the song sounded awful when I knew that it sounded alright before. Thankfully, it never happened to me again, but that was weird. It doesn't happen so much to me in adulthood, but I swear that when I was a kid, homesickness was a distinct, visceral, nearly physical emotion. For instance, say I was 6 and staying at my cousin's house for the weekend without my mom. There would be quiet moments, maybe near bedtime, where it wasn't just, I miss my mom, I wonder what she's doing. Rather, it would be a potent, melancholic ache where I was acutely aware that I was not at home and my mom wasn't there. And it would overcome me out of nowhere. I had no more control over it than if I suddenly felt chilly. I thought everyone experienced this, homesickness, as its own separate and extreme emotion, but I remember mentioning it to a friend in middle school, and she had no idea what I was talking about. What's really weird is that from time to time, I'll get the homesick pain feeling again in situations where it makes no sense. I will already be at home, my family will be there, etc. Then I drink water, and that fixes it. Go figure. This is your daily reminder to drink water today. Noticed it when I was a kid. Sometimes there are moments when I touch a rough or really dry surface and I get a cold shiver up my spine plus goosebumps. Some examples would be concrete, brick, or the cloth seats in my car. It is so odd because it doesn't happen all the time. Another example is if I've just finished washing my hands and they are really dry, maybe after using a crappy soap, and then I reach for something in my jean pocket. Nobody I mentioned it to seems to have experienced it before. ADHDer/fellow sensory issue haver here. I relate to this a lot, actually. I can't stand certain sensations. I have an anti-ASMR response whenever I hear whispers into really sensitive microphones. My eyes start watering, strangely enough. Some fabrics feel really bad to me, especially if it's anything woolly against my dry skin. It tends to feel prickly. I also can't stand using a manual toothbrush. It gives me bad tingles. I've used an electric one for several years now. But those are my quirks. If you've had any weird sensory experiences, what are yours? Let me know in the comments. I know I'm not the only person that experiences this, but I frequently have exploding head syndrome, usually after long periods of irregular sleep. I work rotating shifts. When I lay down to go to sleep, it feels like a huge rush of energy and a cacophony of voices from people who I recently talked to fills my entire head. It only lasts a few seconds, but it makes me feel extremely anxious and paranoid after. Sometimes I feel like I'm dissociating when it happens too. I'm not as freaked out by it now since I know what it is, but the first few times were really bad experiences.
Children of single parents, who was the worst person your parent has dated? My dad started dating a woman who firmly believed that I was part of his old life and that he needed to cut ties with me. I was 14 and became terrified my mom would find someone who would do the same, and I'd end up with no family. My dad's ex-fiancée, she was almost our evil stepmother until one day she decided to call me a fat, lazy female dog, and my dad realized how awful she was to my sister and I. That was the day I learned how much he actually cared for us as well. He dumped her butt and kicked her out of the house. Her awful daughter left too, and it was finally peaceful at my dad's again. He dated her on and off for years afterwards until she went back with her ex-husband. My dad has sworn her off for good now, which I'm glad for since she was a toxic person. I wish he could find someone worth his time though. I know he gets lonely. We'll call him Jose. Younger than my mom, chronically unemployed, a drinker, violent, and literally illiterate. But good-looking, so my mom was smitten. My mom was from a good, in-name family. She had education, she had 2 little daughters, and she brought this scumbag to our peaceful little apartment, and he settled in right away, beating the crap out of all of us, impregnating my mom 4 times, running off for months, and never paying child support. When he was around, he would beat on us mercilessly, and my mom just stood by like a frickin' div, not intervening. When my younger brother was hooping for attention, Jose, a grown man, would hit him. Finally, my mom got diagnosed with lupus and Jose found out and literally abandoned her at the pharmacy. Years later, we find out that he had been sexually abusing my older sister. I am still so mad at my mom for the decades of bullcrap we endured with that man. He was literally a cancer and she couldn't summon the self-esteem to leave him, even when he was beating us with extension cords. There's a poem by Nayira Wahid called Before You Get That Key Made that should be handed out to every single mother. To hell with your loneliness, protect your kids. Well, that was utterly mortifying to read, and I hope things are better for you now. I can think of 2. First of all, my biological father. They got back together for a few weeks. He was a douche. I'd recently got my first pet, a ginger kitten, but I was having previously unknown allergy issues with it. Things were stabilizing for me though, and I was getting used to it when one day my new cat disappeared. My dad admitted that he let it out of the door because he knew I'd been struggling. I spent weeks searching, but never found it. The second was my stepdad. He was actually a really good guy and head over heels in love with my mom. I actually miss him a lot. The reason he was one of the worst? Well, my mom died when I was 17, and overnight my stepdad changed. Within a month, he was in a relationship with another family member, and suddenly he was violent and abusive, left me with no food or money, attacked me for accidentally breaking an ornament of his, and ultimately forced me to run away from home. I was on couch hopping for 9 months and never spoke to him again. Again, goddamn, I hope this person is doing better now. My mom is a serial dater. I have long since stopped paying attention to who she was dating. There was a few doozies, so let me talk about them. B. He came into my life when I was still forming self-awareness and memories. All I remember of him was screaming at my mom about leaving. G. A drunk who was verbally abusive. I remember him once deciding that I was not able to leave the table until I had finished every bite of the meatloaf that he made that night out of the blue. I threw up after stuffing myself with it. Mom stood there while this new rule was randomly enforced. He also called my brother the meaner term for a child born out of wedlock because he had been complaining of pain while standing up. Apparently, that was a personal attack and he needed to cuss out a 5th grader. M. A foster parent of 8 very unwell boys. I was the only girl in the house. There was asexual abuse that I was blamed for from his foster boys and from his own son. He would scream at me like his foster children because I didn't want to play basketball with them. I was screamed at for humming. He eventually had to move me into his closet, so that's where I slept while he would drop his clothing on me in the morning. He was cheating on my mom while she fed and clothed and parented all 11 children in that house. When they broke up, Mom blamed me because I had torn the family apart when I told a teacher about the asexual abuse I was experiencing. ? Some guy she met at a bar, he was really interested in meeting her children, specifically 10-year-old me. Within 2 hours of him coming into the house, he had invited us all out to a nude beach nearby. It was very freeing, he insisted, and he thought I would love it there. Mom didn't make him leave the house for the night, and I slept in her room with the door locked. P. Of all the buttholes, this is who I hate the most. They dated on and off for a few years. I hated him from the minute I met him because my gut and my history had already labeled him as untrustworthy and a heel. I wasn't wrong. Not only did he cheat on my mom throughout their relationship, but he had hidden his AIDS status from my mom and also insisted culturally that he could not wear condoms. Mom thankfully hasn't tested positive for HIV, but part of me wants to deport that man. He was called Greg. He was an abusive prick. He used to lock me and my brothers out in the rain while my mom was at work and had no way of contacting her. He did it in all weathers. He broke my mom's arm in front of me and my brothers. One time, he grabbed my face so hard, his nails left a cut in my cheek. My mom and my 2 aunties got their own back though. My mom stole his change jar. His change jar had notes in. There were no 1 pences or 2 pences, only silvers and more. One auntie smashed every single thing he had. Car windows, house windows, TVs, everything. She also promised to beat him whenever she sees him, and she kept that promise, and has hit him 7 times so far on nights out. My other auntie kept reporting him to his boss for things that he hadn't done, but they couldn't disprove, like being horrible, swearing at her, and he was fired. He was a real piece of crap, and the actions of my family may have been drastic, if not illegal, but he mostly, definitely deserved this. You know, if you screw someone over or mess with someone and abuse their trust, their love enough over time, eventually they might just snap right back at you, and they might be snapping at you for years to come, and I don't think I'll feel sorry for you when they do. The worst definitely has to be my biological dad. I don't know too much about him, but he was an addict and later got sent to prison on the other side of the country for 5 years. He would write to my mom and me saying he would come back soon and everything would be good. At this time, I knew what state he was in, but I was being told that he was just working there. I was too young to understand. When I was 8, I got to talk to him on the phone for the first time since he got arrested. He told me that he had been arrested and wasn't actually working there. My whole family knew where he was, but wouldn't tell me otherwise, and hearing the truth both hurt and blew my mind, and I still have problems because of that today. After he got out of prison, he stayed on the other side of the country, got a construction job, eventually married a girl with 2 kids. Him and my mom were never married, by the way, and he and his wife had 2 more kids together. He later got back into his addictions. His wife left him in fear that her previous husband would find out about my dad's addictions and take his 2 kids back. He came back for a while and lived with his parents. I saw him maybe 2 times during this. Was weird talking to him. He later went back to the other side of the country, and last I've heard, he has been in and out of addiction centers and is likely in one of the many tense cities in that state. It's Cali. I don't know why I'm hiding it. Luckily, his dad, my grandpa, and most of the rest of his family are really good people. My grandpa keeps me updated on that side of the family, and I visit or go on vacation with them once in a while. Very nice people. 2 of my uncles are in the military. The other uncle suffers from alcoholism addiction problems, but gets by best he can. So yeah, that's my story. Thanks to anyone who actually took the time to read it. You are most welcome. My dad has a habit of dating horrible women. The exception was his last girlfriend, who he thought of proposing to, but they broke up before that happened. He also had a thing for Nancys. The first Nancy he dated was okay. I just hated living with her and sleeping on her living room floor. The second Nancy was an abusive douche to my brother and I. We were forced to sleep in her son's room, and my bed was next to the wall adjoined to my dad and her room. She would force us to wake up at 5 a.m. every morning to go to her mother's, to go on a bus, to go to a youth church. Her mother accused me of causing her cat to kill its kittens. This Nancy made me and my brother eat outside during the height of mosquito season without bug spray, while she, my dad, and her son ate inside. She also wouldn't let me eat anything while she wasn't home and was angry when I went over to the apartment next door to watch a movie with the other little girl there and had Dorito chips because I was starving. This lady also grounded me for watching TV because I didn't wake her up in time to go on said church bus. I didn't have a clock in the room where I slept, and we weren't allowed to leave the room during the night. She didn't even have a working television. The third Nancy was a lazy, addicted scumbag who used my dad for money and treated her daughter and I like crap while treating my brother like he was king. Her daughter and I had to clean the entire apartment while she and my dad smoked and drank in the basement. We also weren't allowed snacks and had to make our own food. Mind you, these are all before I turned 13, and he dating these women for like a year at a time. My brother and I were frequently forced to move in with him and his girlfriends. We lived at our grandparents from the time I was 5, and they were my parents. I hated all of his girlfriends, except, like I said before, the last one. He's been single for a while now and seems to be doing okay. I rarely hear from him, but saw him this past Christmas, where he met my daughter for the first time. She's a year and a half old. We don't have a relationship really, but who knows, maybe he has changed, maybe not. For now, I keep my distance mostly for my daughter's sake and my sanity. 19 years of abuse and neglect isn't cancelled out in a night. So true. And what's with this theme of people neglecting their children, or people that they get with just openly neglecting their partner's children? Like, I don't get that. How could someone just sit by and let their children be unfairly treated? I mean, maybe this guy was like worried about, I'm playing devil's advocate here, but maybe this guy was like worried because he was living at her house, he had to play by her rules or else they wouldn't have anywhere to go for a while. I don't know, I should stop playing devil's advocate. People are messed up and stupid. Chad is the only swear word in our house. Our mom used to date this douchebag when my littlest brother was a couple years old, and sadly he picked up some of his habits. Funniest thing is, this butthole got karma big time. He adored his car so much, and every time he got a new one, he'd hit AITA. He used to abuse our mom for stupid reasons, and I had 2 kids who we all felt really bad for, especially his oldest. Hope his butt got even more karma. I was confused for him, and I was like, wait, he just hits AITA every time he gets a new car? It's like a ritual for him, but no, it's just an accident every time? I find that hard to believe. My dad's girlfriend straight up bullied me. My dad is currently dating a woman who manipulated the hell out of me as a child. When I was 9 or 10, she would tell me my real mom wanted to adopt my younger sister so she would get more money once she filed for divorce on my father. One time, I left my flat iron plugged in the bathroom. Not on, just plugged in. The next time I was at their house, I went to straighten my hair and couldn't find my flat iron, so I asked her if she saw it. She told me she threw it out and giggled like a freak. Irked me so badly. I asked her why she would do that and begged her to tell me if she was kidding. I asked her to buy me a new one because I had spent my own money on it and really needed it for my poofy hair. She just laughed and kept telling me it was gone. I ended up spending $40 on a new one, and her response was that I wouldn't have had to do it if you hadn't left the first one plugged in. Fast forward to Christmas that year when I had one gift left under the tree. I opened it up excitedly to find, you guessed it, my frickin' flat iron. The one she threw away, and the one I had to replace because I left it plugged in the wall, same as you would a TV when it's not on. My dad's girlfriend crying, laughing, and I was just so confused and uncomfortable. I was 16 then, and 5 years later I still haven't forgotten that feeling. I feel like this may seem like nothing to some people, but this was all happening while she was trying to convince me to move out of my mom's house and in with her and my dad, accusing me of heavy substance use, starving myself, both never true, and telling me how I was the daughter she never had but always wanted. That crap was so confusing. I'm glad I'm away from that now and getting the help I need to move on. Moral of the story, don't give your partner control over your kids. They might be nuts. I don't know, obviously, because I don't really have any intention of getting with a woman who already has children and whatnot, but it must be hard as, like, you know, a step parent of some sort, I suppose, to figure out where the line really is with telling your partner's kids what to do. I'm not referring to this situation, I'm just saying in general it's probably difficult. This woman in particular, though, sounds petty as all hell. The man she ended up marrying, he all out demanded respect, that my brother and I call him sir. He yelled a lot and whined when he didn't get his way. One time, I refused to call him sir, and he beat the crap out of me. Broke my hand and left bruises all up my back from being kicked on the ground. After that, he refused to take me to the hospital, so I, a boy, walked 5 miles to the hospital myself. Mom is still with him. She chose him over me. I don't see either of them anymore 20 years later. That is probably the greatest pain I can imagine, like your parent, your guardian, whatever, choosing someone else over you, unjustly, that is. I mean, if you've done really bad things and it's just like they've had enough of you, I guess that's the case, but in this case. My father dated a girl which made my parents' couple break. This girl was poorly washed, had her 7 kids homeschooled, and her husband was working far away. Plus, she looked like a literal witch. Raised by my dad, he dated a pathological liar named Patricia for about 7 years. My dad was moving from Florida to Middlesex, Virginia. He met her in VA. She seemed nice enough. I was 19 and joining the Marines, so I didn't go to Virginia with him. Stayed with a friend in Florida till I left. Gave my Bronco and my dog Angel to my dad to look after while I was gone. On my first deployment, I get told that my dog got very sick. I got her one summer when I was 10 and raised her myself because my dad was constantly working to support us. I loved her like a daughter. Now I'm getting told that Angel is dying. The dogs with my dad go outside and free roam because they're well behaved and intelligent, so they believe she may have ingested some antifreeze because their nearest neighbor has old vehicles that could potentially be leaking. We were thick as thieves. My little girl dies and I'm not there to comfort her. Fast forward many years, I leave the military. Go to Virginia. My dad is leaving Trish and moving a few counties away, so I had to figure out somewhere else to stay. Asked him what happened. He said that she was cheating, lying, abusing pain meds, etc. He said his first big flag was when he witnessed a friend of Trish's call her a liar. Trish swore on her daughter's life that whatever the topic was true in tears. Thing is, my dad knew for a fact that Trish was lying. She had also pulled the same act on him. Things unraveled gradually after that, and then he decided to seek greener pastures. About a year later, I get a call from my dad. He was on Facebook chatting with an old mutual friend he had with Trish, who also turned away from her. Conversation somehow got on the subject of the woman's very vocal dogs. She told my dad that Trish had told her she should just poison them with antifreeze if she disliked her dogs. Trish then went on to say that she had gotten rid of one of her ex's dogs that way. 2 + 2 = 4. Trish murdered my Angel. My dad is currently dating someone my age. He's 53 and she's 22, so there's that. Ooh, boy, that's an uncomfortably big age gap right there. I kind of think once you're in your 20s, it's really up to you who you date. It takes 2 to tango, and, just try and make wise choices that are good for you, Don't get with a douchebag who might abuse your trust or manipulate you. That's all I have to say about it, really. Well, pretty much every guy my mom has dated thus far has been a butthole in some way, shape, or form, but I'd say the worst was my stepfather, who was also the father to both my little brother and sister. See, my mom just turned 16 when she had me. I spent the first few years of my life with my grandparents while my mom went off to college. When she came back when I was 6, she brought back the man that would make my life a living hell for the next 4 years. My grandparents did shelter me a bit too much, and because of that, my stepfather tried to effectively rewrite me into his definition of a son, someone I was the exact opposite of. Because of how old I was, this was effectively impossible, and it made him angry. I was excessively punished for some of the smallest things. I forget what it was for, but once he wanted me to clean our entire dining room and kitchen floor with a toothbrush, a good 200+ square feet of tile. I got done with 1 row before my mom stepped in. thankfully. He would force me into doing things I simply didn't want to do. He forced me onto a carnival ride at our annual state fair that I was terrified to go on. I'm so thankful the guy I sat next to comforted me through it. There were some things he forced me into that left me with physical scars. We once threw a football at each other for so long that my thumbs started to bleed. They are really faint, but you can still see the scars from the day 15 years later. Time and time again, he was met with resistance in turning me into his definition of a son, and every time it happened, it only aggravated him more and more. It didn't help that in those first 6 years I developed a deep relationship with my grandparents, only for him to hate both of them with a burning passion for some reason. He finally died when I was 10 by rolling his car doing probably 80 miles per hour and got thrown out of the window for not wearing a seatbelt. Despite all of that, I don't hate him. The damage he did is certainly still there. I mean, he came in at the worst possible point in my life, and I'm not entirely sure if the damage could ever be truly repaired, but he did give me two of the best things in my life, my brother and sister. My brother is in his first year of college, going to ASU on a full ride from National Guard, and my sister is in her sophomore year of high school. When my brother graduated high school, he told me that he's the person he is today, mostly because of me, and him saying that was like getting a return on all of those years of hell. He was only 4 when my stepfather died, and it was years before my mom started dating again. Since she was the only income for our family, I was left with basically raising my 2 siblings while going through middle and high school. But that one line made it all worth it. Well, it truly warms my heart to find a story with a nice silver lining in it. When I was younger, probably around 9 or so, my mom dated this guy named Jim. I don't remember much about him except that he smelled weird. But after they broke up, she tried to delete herself and she was in the hospital for a few days. I remember her telling someone on the phone the night before that we, her 4 kids, would be fine without her. Thankfully, it's been 18-ish years later, and she's alive and well, and has been married for almost 16 years. As for my dad, he dated this awful woman named Tracy off and on for 7 or so years. She was always talking crap. She made mine and my dad's relationship horrible. She also made terrible eggs. When they broke up, my brother and I jumped for joy. He's been married for 4.5 years now to an incredible woman who I love dearly, and me and him are so close now. As soon as Tracy left, our relationship drastically changed for the better. I think this all goes to show how important it is to be brave. You gotta be brave to be able to walk away from a situation that you've grown used to out of fear of what the unknown is, because you might be like, yeah, things are bad now, but maybe they'll get better. But you need that bravery to be like, no, I need to walk away and whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen. It could be a bit worse. It could be a bit better. But, you know, if you don't have the bravery to face life itself, really, when you're having a tough time, then you'll never know if you can actually find that happiness that you deserve. Hopefully that made sense. What is the most messed up thing your parents have done to you? While growing up, my parents would argue every so often, and it would escalate to screaming matches, and it pretty much sucked. This went on until I was 4 or so. The last time it happened, my father struck my mother, and she decided it was time for us to leave. We lived out in the country where neighbors weren't around for miles. The closest neighbor we had was about 7 miles away. My mother grabbed my baby brother and headed out the door. I was already outside, avoiding them and their screaming. She told me to follow her, so I did. As we were leaving the property, my father yells out for my mother to come back, which she refuses to do so. Come back, or I'll dispense a bullet in alt account 9229. She turned and refused again, and I turned around in disbelief. My father threatened to shoot me if she didn't come back. I just stood there, not knowing what to do. He called out to her name, "Come back now." I stood there as my mother walked back to grab my hand. As she reached for it, my father pulled the trigger. The next thing I remember was waking up in the hospital 2.5 weeks later. My father actually did it. And that is the worst thing either of my parents have done to me. My dad came out when I was 15. My mother, a religious zealot, pretty much manipulated my view of him, declaring that he was destroying not only their marriage, but also our family, and dragged me to love one-out conferences which were, for all intents and purposes, brainwashing, bigoted, gay-bashing parties. She forced me into Christian counseling and cried to me daily about how horrible he was. I found myself distancing myself from my father, whom I had considered my best friend for most of my life. Eventually, about 3 months later, I realized realized that she was one of the most hateful and hurtful human beings on earth and came back to my dad asking for forgiveness. He's sitting next to me while we are vacationing in Hawaii right now, and my mother and I have a weird distant relationship now. My stepdad, or one of my mom's pimps, depending on how you look at it, stole my high school girlfriend, got her addicted to illegal substances, and turned her into a hooker. He even told me he was going to do it as soon as he met her. Okay, I think that might be the worst one. That is the worst one, and I hope that guy's in prison, or dead, preferably from horrible, unnatural causes. I married a woman for her papers. Her parents were illegal immigrants. She was born in Mexico 3 months before they made their exodus. When she was 25 years old, she found out that the social security number that her mom was using was actually hers. She was born in Ontario, Canada, not Mexico. As a result of being raised thinking she was an illegal, she dropped out of high school believing she wouldn't be able to graduate high school without a social security number. Damn, that mom kinda screwed her kid over. My parents guilted me into loaning them $8,000, over half my paycheck, for a year when I was 17. It is now 4 years later, and I'm pretty sure they have no intention of paying me back. I think my dad forgot it ever happened. My mom and dad separated when I was 8. When I turned 15, he was diagnosed with colon cancer and died a year later. On his deathbed, she did everything she could to talk him into marrying her again, all while he was extremely medicated. She had him brought to out home for hospice so he could be with his children. He never agreed to marry her again, regardless of her constant attempts, but he did make the mistake of giving her power of attorney. He passed away, and she took all of his estate for herself and conned my sisters and I into signing away parts of our inheritance while we were still young and dumb. All 3 of us, 14 years later, still have financial trouble when we could have had our lives and education taken care of by our hard-working father. We no longer acknowledge her as anything but our birth giver now that we're all grown up and know what she did to our family. His death day is the 21st of July. Rest in peace, Dad. I understand wanting a lot of money for yourself, I get it, but when you're so greedy that you're like,
No, the money's only mine. Screw my children. They can go to hell for all I care.
it's just, what the hell, you are too greedy. Mine used my social security and other personal information to drain $76,000 from my savings account, which I had built up over the course of saving every penny working in a crappy used bookstore for 5 years while selling Magic the Gathering cards on the side in high school.
Hey, Brandine, we gotta dip into the boys' Magic the Gathering card money.
That is how that conversation went down. You can't convince me otherwise. Sorry your parents stole all your money. My dad has been saving up for me to go to college since I was really young. When the time finally came, I applied to my top choice of college, and I got in. I even got a financial aid package with the school covering $47,000 of the $56,000 bill. The first payment is due in less than a month, and my dad gets the idea to tell me he can't afford for me to go anymore. It turns out he took all the money he saved for me and spent it to fix his house so he could sell it. But that's not the end. He bought my sister a car, one that she relies on to get to work and school. My other sister dropped out of high school a few months before she would have graduated. She also has no desire to drive, but yet she convinced my father to take the car from my sister just so she wouldn't have it. Sounds like a case of sibling resentment that's been going on for a bit too long. My mom's husband got sent to jail. While he was there, I let my mom stay with me as he was the provider in their home. She ran my phone bill up over $2,000 in collect calls. I also helped get her on assistance so she could help with rent as we moved to a bigger place to be able to fit everyone. I first had to pay off a bank account over $200 that was in overdraft for her to be able to get money. When she finally got her assistance check, she put me on the phone with the butthole so he could tell me that she sent the whole thing to him as he just got out of jail and needed money. That jerk-off went to jail for child smut. Then to boot, she took off to go stay with him without a goodbye, and I haven't seen her in 4 years, and she refuses to come back. We were really close before all of this. Let me tell you what my old man did to me before I was old enough to talk. Because my father loved me so very much, he decided that we should share the same name. My mom had the foresight to be wary of this. She figured with the same name, financial mishaps could easily be blamed on the wrong person. My dad assured her that due to our age difference, that could never happen. However, money got tight around the time I turned 1, and my dad didn't want to cut back. So, What did he do? He opened 5 new lines of credit with my social security number and maxed them all out in a matter of months. That might have been okay if he had ever intended to pay them back, but of course he didn't. When I turned 18 and applied for, well, anything, I got a resounding no. I decided to check my credit, and what did I see? Well, you've already heard the story, so yeah, 5 maxed out credit cards. But that's not all. He also assigned medical bills to me, as well as large amounts of other miscellaneous stuff. I've been fighting this crap from the onset of my adult life, and no, I haven't been able to resolve it all yet. Some things would require that I go to court, and call me old-fashioned, but I can't sue my parents. Screw the credit system, and screw irresponsible parents. Clearly, there was a reason why your mother was wary in the beginning. My parents have each dated and married and divorced people that are younger than my brothers and me. The worst thing, however, that I've witnessed my dad do is push my grandma down a flight of stairs. My mom does horrible things all of the time. When I was a child, she once took my brothers and me to a guy's house while my stepdad was at work. They put us in front of the TV with a pizza and had loud SX in the bedroom. They got divorced while I was in college and didn't tell me. They pretended to be together for 4 months until I decided to randomly come home to surprise them. It was rather surprising to see all my dad's stuff gone and pictures of my mom and some other guy up all over the place. When I was 17, I woke up at 3:30 a.m. to see 2 men I had never seen before talking with my parents. I was informed I was being sent to a wilderness program in Utah and that we were going to be leaving in a few minutes. I was forced to get dressed and I was driven to the airport by these 2 thugs. The next morning, I was freezing in the Utah mountains. My mother is terrible with money, so when I went to college and started getting refund checks to help pay for my rent, she started asking me for money. She always promised that she would pay me back in time. She just needed the money at the moment. And now I'm even caring for my underage brother since she could not deal with him anymore. By the end of this semester, I was 3 months late on my own rent payments after having paid for a few of her own rent payments, her taxes, her car troubles, and her having filed affidavits to bring her parents, she's from the Philippines, over here. And even though she got nearly $1,800 a month, she works as a nurse at a big local hospital, she couldn't afford to pay me back even without paying her rent, dropping our cell phone plan, revoking our insurance, and not paying her car payments, on which I'm the lead signer. Yeah, people who are bad with money, especially family members who are fine with not only the erosion of their relationship with you, but also just generally being a pain in the butt in your life, God, they're the worst. My mom decided to leave my dad on Christmas morning when I was 5. Her way of telling him was to just take me and leave. We went to her mother's house where Mike, a guy she used to date before my dad, just happened to be. Truthfully, Dad had been cheating on her too, and he was on illegal substances and was an alcoholic. Anyway, I remember that one night we went to Mike's house and I remember laying on the floor crying about wanting to go home. I remember telling Mom that I smelled the devil's lettuce, and Mike complimented me on how smart I was. Anyway, she divorced Dad, married Mike, and divorced him, and married again by September. As mentioned, Dad was an alcoholic and an addict, and that continued for many years. He's admitted to trying every substance except for one, as he was afraid of the side effects. I remember one night when Dad was really depressed, and he told me about how he tried to self-delete himself. He thought about doing it, but then thought about me and decided not to. The only way I could make sense of why he was telling me this was that he wanted to see me hurt, that he gained some sort of pleasure from my pain, and I decided that I would never let him see that he hurt me again. I have very few memories from before my parents split, and I only saw my dad on the weekends after that, and he lived in his parents' basement. Still does, actually. And I spent most of my time there with my grandparents. Growing up, I saw my dad not as a parent, but as someone who I could play video games with. When my grandparents would be planning a vacation, they would let my mom know so she could plan an excuse so as to not send me there without them. There were some rough times and so many broken promises. I remember once when I went downstairs to see Dad and the door was locked and I knocked and didn't get a response and his car was there, so I went back upstairs and told my grandparents. My grandfather went down and ended up breaking the door to get in and found my dad passed out after getting really drunk and taking a lot of sleeping pills. There were so many times I remember when Dad's friends came over and they'd go to the other room to buy and sell and smoke whatever. So many times I know that he put his pleasures above my safety, driving drunk or stoned or taking me along when he was buying illegal substances. Things were bad to the point point where we had discussed what to do if I answered the door and it was the police looking for him, or one of his buddies. I was to ask if they had a warrant, and if they didn't, to close the door. I was probably in about 7th grade when I was upstairs getting ready for church when there was a knock at the door. I went to the door and the man identified himself as a detective and asked for my dad. I asked if he had a warrant and he didn't, so I started closing the door. My grandmother heard and came to the door and told him he was downstairs and that she'd go get him. I was thinking she just sold that out, but she knew that the detective was there to talk to him about him getting robbed the night before. I remember growing up wondering if my Christmas presents were stolen, as I'd sometimes get Nintendo games that were in rental boxes instead of retail packaging. I remember things getting stolen from the house and appearing a few weeks later, meaning that he pawned them somewhere. All that said, he claims to be clean now. Got attacked by a dog when I was 5 to 6, torn the left side of my face up pretty badly. My parents sue when they get informed I was the third and most serious attack from the dog. Later, animal abuse was found to have been a factor. A settlement was made, but the money was to be released to me when I turned 18. Fast forward till around my 16th birthday, and I really want a car. My parents tell me with my permission they can access the money early, and I of course agree and get my Honda and am content. Then I turn 18. My parents sit me down and tell me that the best plan is to keep the money in a CD to gain interest. I agreed to this as well. It wasn't until my 20th that I finally started to think of uses for the money, and also that I had never actually seen any statements or actual sum of money on paper from a bank or anything. For the first time, I aggressively asked my parents about it and was told the truth. You probably guessed it, but at 16, when I first gave them permission to use that money, they just used it like a new bank account, drained it dry. I don't hold any grudges. They suck with money and are impulsive. They could never afford to repay either. I'm glad I never really saw how much it was until they told me, because I might have acted like some stereotypical trust fund character. Parents do messed up stuff, but I could have had it a lot worse. Live and learn. Hanging on the edge of tomorrow. Good on this guy for being able to take it in such strides, like he says, live and learn. I would be absolutely livid, that is for sure. But like, overall, it's good that this person isn't in such dire straits or anything that they're like, bitter about it, and they're just getting on with their life, and that's cool. All respect to them. My parents got divorced when I was 8. Not a big deal, that kind of stuff happens all the time. Well, neither of them were particularly good parents. I started off living with my dad. He has huge anger issues. Literally anything will set him off and throw him into a violent tantrum. After a few years of this, I moved in with my mom in Texas. My dad and I lived in Tennessee. Well, my mom was a huge illegal substance abuser. She'd frequently use a lot of hard stuff. I could see needle marks. I don't know what she did, and frankly, I don't care. About the time I was 15, her new husband had left her and she just went insane. She would leave for weeks at a time. She would stay in hotels with strange men, and she would spend all her money on illegal substances. We frequently had our utilities turned off since she wouldn't bother paying bills. I wanted to stop living like that, so I wanted to get a job, even a crappy one, somewhere. Anywhere. However, I didn't have a driver's license. I had to take driver's ed in the state I was in. I actually asked my mom once if she would stop drinking and doing substances long enough for me to get a license and get a job. She laughed at me and just said no. I had to contact her boss once to see if they knew where she was. He felt bad for me and took me to the grocery store and bought me food, so I had food in the house. Eventually, I got tired of living like that, so I had to move back in with my dad. A few weeks after I left, she was evicted since she stopped making payments on the house, and even spent some time in prison for producing illegal substances in her house and a bunch of other messed up crap. She recently died from heart failure. As terrible of a mother as she was, it was still one of the worst times of my life. My dad didn't change much in the years I lived with my mom. He had a new wife, and he treated her and me like complete crap. He made me live essentially in a closet. If I said something he didn't like, he'd threaten me. One time, he grabbed me by the hair, threw me against the wall, and threatened to almost kill me. I immediately contacted the police. They closed the investigation pretty much immediately. At the age of 17, my dad kicked me out after an argument about I kid you not, our ISP. The police came and wouldn't even listen to me. I was a straight A student in high school, never had a disciplinary record of any kind, and they just called me a delinquent and left. Screw the police. I told the school what happened, and I got a social services guy to work with me. I moved to my girlfriend's place down the street, and I got my car in my name. At 18, I went to college at Georgia Tech. I put myself through school. I spent 2.5 years as a TA there, and I graduated with a degree in computer science. I immediately got a job as a software engineer upon graduation, and I'm making as much as my dad does, and I'm less than half his age. Screw my parents. My dad actually sold my motorcycle while I was in college. He owes me $2,000 because of that, but I'm not even going to bother bringing it up because I don't feel like putting up with his threats anymore. Maybe it's the way I read it, but there was a point where I was like, oh, it feels like he just remembered the motorcycle thing. Like, this whole thing was like an emotional roller coaster between the Harry Potter treatment, the mother, dying, whether or not she was a bad mother and stuff, obviously emotional time for the writer. Point is, this all sucks and I feel for you. When I was younger and had my first bank account, my mother forced me to put her name on it, and my dad helped me get the account. She said that because I was a minor, she could legally get her name on the account even if I said no, and being young, I believed her. I had about $2,000 in the account saved from my first job and such. I checked my account one day afterwards, and it was at negative $2,000. I was super shocked and infuriated. Another time, after paying off the bank, when I was just turning 18, once I just hit 18, she said she wanted no more to do with me since she was no longer getting child support from my dad and was going to move to Florida. I gave her the rent money for the next month. We paid a month in advance just before she left because she was the one who always mailed it out and it was in her name. The next month after she left, I received a notice of eviction because she didn't pay the rent with the money and instead used it to fund her trip to Florida. Last but not least, right before she died, she took out a credit card in my sister's name and charged up to $15,000. My sister found out after she had passed, and because there was no proof, she was forced to pay off the 15 grand. She cut my sandwich into rectangles instead of triangles. Forgive me, I just wanted a little bit of brevity in this depressing topic. My mother's shortlist. Spent student loan money I sent from Japan. About $800, derided me hugely for not driving with my drunk aunt, chastised me for not wanting to carry her prescription of benzos through China with no script before the night of my wedding. On a trip to her place from out of town, she invited her boyfriend, who had a restraining order against me over the fact that he robbed us for our rent, causing us to get evicted, so I chased him with a bat. She had a restraining order against him too for beating her up. I had to just leave and go back home. She invited my ex to her house and fixed her up with some big black guy while we were freshly broken up at 18 years old. They screwed in my old bedroom. She adopted a guy who me and my friends warned her about. He was later arrested for attempted murder, beat her boyfriend in my apartment because she found out he had hit on my girlfriend, and now refuses to see my child, her only grandchild, because I insisted on her sobriety to see him. I could go on. Mom is kind of a C-word. There must be so much internal conflict for people whose parents are just bad and horrible to them, but it's like they're your parent and they're the only one that you've got, so you want them in your life to some degree, and you want them to be better for themselves and you. Like, God, I can't imagine. This is probably going to pale in comparison to most other people, but I can think of two things my mother did to me that were kind of messed up. The most messed up thing my dad did was leave when I was a baby, but meh, screw that guy. 1. She cut a hole in my bedroom door big enough for the cat to get through so it could get away from the new dog. The cat decided to habitually use my bed as a litter box. I was 13 at the time, so there wasn't much I could do but try to block the hole. She would yell at me for blocking the hole. Meanwhile, my bed is reeking of cat urine. No matter how much I tried to clean it, it just stunk, and eventually so did all the rest of the things in my room. I was not very popular at school that year. Eventually, I got a new bed, but only after much whining on my part. The carpet still smelled like cat pee, so I never wanted to have friends over or anything like that. Fast forward a few years. Considering that my mother seemed to value pets' comfort and security over mine, to the point where it created an unpleasant living environment for me, I decided to move out as soon as I turned 18. 18. Although I had saved up money for my car myself, my mom's name was on the title because I was a minor. The insurance and everything else was also in her name, again because I was a minor. 2 weeks before my 18th birthday, I made arrangements and started getting ready to leave. When she found out I was planning on leaving, she took the tags off of my car and turned them into the Department of Motor Vehicles, the DMV. The reason that this is messed up is because now I would have to get the car re-tagged. What that entails is getting the car inspected. In this state, before a vehicle can be tagged, you must take it to a mechanic and get it certified as road safe. I had to have a few minor repairs. It was my first car, so it was a used 1993 Ford station wagon. It was bound to need work eventually anyway. But of course, the amount I had to spend was enormous because I took it to a mechanic, and I was an 18-year-old girl with no concept of anything mechanical. It came to about $300 in 2002. That was 2 weeks' paycheck at Arby's, where I had been working since I was 15 to save up enough money to get the hell out and go to college. But I did have my savings, so I dipped into it. After the inspection, I had to pay for the tags. I had to put a huge down payment on a new insurance policy because my mom canceled mine a week before she took my tags off of my car, but she still took my money when I came to her with my monthly payment, so I had to get high-risk insurance for being an uninsured motorist, even though I had no clue I was. I also had to pay taxes on my car. That's right, I had to pay frickin' taxes on a car I already paid my frickin' taxes on when I bought it. If I had been the one to turn in my tags, I would have gotten a refund from the DMV for the tags and taxes and all that. Since my mom was the one to do it, she got $250 for free. All in all, between fees, repairs, and my new awesomely high insurance rates, I spent close to $1,000 just getting my piece of crap car that probably wasn't even worth $1,000 back on the road. Happy birthday to me. I didn't have enough money to move. I had only planned on living in a rented home for the summer before I went away to college, so I hadn't allotted more than $1,500 for it. Now, unless I wanted to dip into the college fund I had set up for myself, I was stuck at home.
What question did you refuse to answer in a job interview? What's your zodiac sign? At first, I thought it was a joke, but he went on to explain in detail that it was very important that all the signs of his employees were compatible with his to prevent drama in the workplace. Then he started telling me about past lives. It was a weird interview. Why should we hire you when you just got married and will probably be starting a family soon? I initially refused to answer, but couldn't resist by the end of the interview, telling them that I'd had my tubes tied for years and literally couldn't have kids. My race. They were interviewing to fill several positions at an office near downtown where they were in need of Spanish-speaking workers because the area served is mostly Hispanic. The interviewer asked me what is my race and where is my family from. He asked this because he saw that I am fluent in Spanish. I am mixed but look very white. He seemed a little perturbed that I was fluent in his native language. He kept questioning my race and why do I speak Spanish? I let him know that I have spoken Spanish since I first learned to speak. I had dual primary languages in my home. I took Spanish in high school and college. I was hired by college as a Spanish tutor, yet he doubted my knowledge because of my light skin. He did this to a girl I was chatting with in the waiting area too. I could hear her interview because they were doing them in cubicles, not private. With her, he insisted she couldn't really speak Spanish. The girl was black, but she was from Belize. Anyhow, we were both hired even though he failed us on our spoken language portions. She and I wrote grievances and had him removed, as well as our scores corrected. He interviewed another girl I knew who looks very Hispanic but barely speaks Spanish, and he does not write it. He gave her a 100. At my office, I found out he had given anyone that looked white or black very low scores, even if they aced the interview. Well, you know what they say, another day, another case of casual workplace racism. What social media do I use, and that I would be required to friend a member of the HR department. Luckily, nothing happened. There is a big trial going on at the time over employers' rights to spy on their employees online, so they didn't push it. This is kind of related to something I was thinking about the other day, in that the internet used to be a specific place that you would go to, like, just a computer, but nowadays it's on your phone, it's connected to your work, your life in general. It's just inescapable now. Honestly, I think the internet was way cooler before it became mainstream mainstream and with the advertisements, corporations and stuff. And well, you could turn off the internet at a time, but now it's just interconnected with your whole life. And that kind of sucks. I mean, can I leave my phone at home when I go for a walk? Sure I can, but I'm also thinking about work emails that I might need to respond to immediately. And just overall, it's harder to pull yourself away from the internet than it ever was in the early 2000s. Anyway, it's just genuinely good that you didn't have to do that because privacy is important, including in the workspace. What church do you attend? I told them I didn't really think it was relevant to doing the job. They thought otherwise. In the course of one interview, I was asked, are you married? Do you have kids? Are you pregnant? When do you plan on becoming pregnant? How old are you? The interviewer then proceeded to tell me she needed to ask these questions because the last LAA she hired was pregnant and left for maternity leave within 5 months, and the interviewer was not happy with that. The kicker, I was interviewing at a civil law firm and being interviewed by a paralegal. I'm a girl and have a trade and have always worked with only men. Most interviews bring up the subject in a polite way, like situational questions asking what I would do if a coworker was being sexist, etc. One particular interview with a company called Redacted, the interviewer straight out asked if I have a boyfriend. I said no, more out of shock. He continued on to say that I'm very young and around the age where I will probably get pregnant. I just sat there and stared. He then asked me if I planned on getting pregnant because if so, they would not hire me. Every single question he asked was specifically about the fact that I'm a girl and there were no job-related questions. I just said, thanks, but no thanks. Well, if they made you that uncomfortable, it's probably for the best. The only reason why I think they might not have asked any work-related questions was probably because, as you already stated, this is an industry you are familiar with, I believe, and maybe your resume was just superb, so they didn't really feel the need to ask you any questions about that. I mean, from what you're saying, it sounds like they were already interested in hiring you, except they were worried about you going on maternity leave. Which, if I were to play devil's advocate and put myself in that position, yeah, it would be kind of annoying to hire someone, and then after a few months, it's just, well, bye. But at the end of the day, I also understand why women going out for jobs and careers would be really annoyed at that question being asked regularly. I mean, it comes up a lot in this topic. I once got asked what my parents did for a living. It was for a cleaning position. I was like, what? This guy asked me a bunch of word puns and riddles. I answered one thinking he was joking, then asked him what the point was, and he didn't know. Later in the interview, he asked me if I could promise I wouldn't get pregnant for my first year there. And in the end, I got the job. I had a few in the only interview I ever did for a farm machinery sales agent. Can you safely say that you won't have any serious accidents whilst working here? Have you ever been pregnant, or are you going to become pregnant in the next 8 months? Have you ever had a boyfriend, and if yes, did you have SX while together? Are you still together? Again, I can understand the perspective and reasoning from an employer's standpoint of why they ask these questions, but to a degree, it's just like, where do you get off? Do you have any medical or mental issues? My medical history is my business, not theirs. I work at a major university and we have an office of disability services which can assist you in accommodating a disability, etc. So I technically do have a disability according to the university's parameters, and therefore I fall under this protection. I've been shopping around for a different job at the same institution, and in one interview they actually asked me what my disability was. I was shocked they would ask, since that is pretty expressly forbidden by university policy, and refused to answer. I didn't get a call back, but based on them asking, I didn't want to work there either. I may have dropped an anonymous note to HR about it. So I understand that this is to some degree not down, I guess, but I also actually don't really see the issue in asking. Like, I don't know, I've got learning difficulties, for example. If someone asks, I'm not really insulted by them asking. I'm more annoyed in situations where people make assumptions about me because I have a certain learning difficulty. What's even more annoying than that is when people just make assumptions based on their lack of knowledge on what I have. Like, I don't know, this one just seems kind of petty in my opinion. Would you and your wife be interested in this traveling swingers club I help run? We could show you the town, get you to meet new people. It'll be fun. I was the interviewer. I'm a guy. Interviewee was a girl. And in case you were curious about what question to never ask in an interview, this is among the top 10. No, I didn't answer it. I just said that
we're out of time and I had to go. HR will show you out. Someone will be in contact with you. See you later. Goodbye. Nice knowing you. Too bad you can't stay. What happened was that she was banned from ever applying, and since Silicon Valley is so close-knit, I'm sure the HR types got the word out that she was a walking sexual harassment suit waiting to happen. I had an employer actually ask if I was a Christian. I'm not. He said that they follow Christian principles in their business and they'd like to know how I would fit in. I told him that it's illegal to ask that question and I'm not comfortable answering it. He ended the interview right there. I didn't get the job, which I'm glad for because working there sounds like my personal hell. I should have sued and just taken it easy for a few years. The CIA asked me what laws I would be willing to break if I was hired by them. I didn't really know how to answer and I said I would have to know more about the situation. I didn't get the job. I may not refuse to answer a question outright, but depending on the personality of the interviewer, I will make jokes about the questions, especially if it's obvious that they think the questions are stupid too. The biggest one for me is, what is your biggest flaw? If I know the interviewer is receptive to jokes, I'll reply with something like, a low tolerance for irrelevant questions. We had a good laugh about it and moved on to the next question in the interview. Interview question at a small consulting firm in DC. Did great work, friends there with nice salaries and benefits. I put down on my resume, as a consultant at another firm, this line, paraphrasing for privacy and not doxing myself, optimized performance and logistics of new product line, increasing profit margins by 30% at big firm. It's one of my huge achievements, and leaving out details was never a problem for any other consulting firms like McKinsey, for example. I didn't mention who that big client on the resume that I was working for was, because most of them are supposed to be confidential. The interviewer's eye fell on that bullet, and as I revealed a couple of details like industry, my role, how I did the job, the achievement, etc., she insisted on asking who the client was, which doesn't really matter at that point. I kept rebuffing her, stating that I can't reveal my client or the product lines still in development at the time due to confidentiality agreements. This went on for 5 minutes until the interview basically derailed and she ended it, telling me that I was uncooperative and I shouldn't expect a call. After cursing my luck and damning that wretched woman, seriously, who insists on asking such a stupid question? I can't reveal who it is because I breached contract, and in consulting, you should respect your client's privacy. I did get a call a couple of weeks later from a board member who heard about my interview and offered me a job. It was a good year and my interviewer got flack some months after she left the company because she started revealing details about her clients, which got an entire team at that firm in trouble because of breach of contract. Big lesson, kids. If you have a confidentiality agreement that is still ongoing and hasn't expired, you should respect it, even in an interview for another job. Otherwise, kiss your career goodbye. I mean, it's kind of a good idea to just generally respect contracts that you sign in general, and if you're not sure about them, read them very, very carefully. Or pay someone to read them, because reading contracts can be super boring. I sat in on an interview for a PA with my boss. When on the subject of marriage and kids, my boss asked the interviewee if she had married out of love or if her family had arranged it. She answered love, and we thought that was the end of it. He then proceeded to ask if she was raising her kids as Sikhs and if she would be comfortable working in an environment with lots of men. I cringed so much in that interview, but the lady held her own and is basically still working for us. There was no malice in what my boss was asking. He was genuinely just interested in her culture, but went the complete wrong way about it. Just the other week, when we were all out for a meal, he kept asking her if his pronunciation of basmati was right. The best of it is she came from an Indian family but has lived the Western culture all her life. She's just as clueless as he is, but finds it all very hilarious. I was actually asked for the username and password to my Facebook, Twitter, and any other social media accounts I may have. I flat said, no, that information will not be forthcoming. The interviewer looked up as though to say, just who the heck do you think you are? And replied, excuse me? I replied that I never saw the use or need for social media. I have the ability to instantly message, call, or go to meet people within my circle in person, and I felt that social media was a tool further used to divide us rather than bring us together. He just stared at me until I finally said, I follow a 3P rule when I'm online. I never post anything I don't want my parents, a priest, or a predator finding out, which means you can rest assured that there will be no impropriety to harm your business. I'm here to make money. By by making you money. He continued to stare at me, and I finally said, I'm sorry, I seem to be wasting your time. I thank you anyway, and you have a wonderful day. I got a call 3 weeks later, same guy. He actually tried looking me up and couldn't find me or a reference to me. I didn't get the job, but I did get considered. The moral to this tale? Follow the 3P rule and never ever use your real name, nor should you ever allow anyone else to use your real name if you can at all control it. Okay, now first off, obviously, interviewer, massive invasion of privacy, stupid question to ask, but also, while right, this person definitely went off on something that they've been thinking about for a long time in their feelings of social media that just wasn't necessary. And I say that as a bit of a hypocrite because while it is my job to read these for you and give my thoughts on some of them, I do absolutely go on tangents. So the interview questions can be very different from what we're used to in the West. It is common to ask what your parents do, if you're married or plan on getting married, how much alcohol you can drink. This is not to determine if you have a drinking problem, but because after work drinking with co-workers is a big part of Korean work culture. So the more booze you can handle, the better. How much money you have, religion, and when you apply for a job, you have to send a photo of yourself along with your application. If you're not deemed good looking enough, and often if you're black or Indian or another undesirable race, you won't get the job. It is slowly changing though. Anyone else pick up on the discomfort in my voice as I was quoting that? Why is a pretty girl like you looking for a job? You should just find a rich guy and get married. For context, I was fresh out of high school at 17 plus, and this was the first interview I had ever done in my life at a small shipping yard for the position of a clerk. I decided to go to college after that. It does get worse as I approach marriageable age, as constant barrages of questions on my plans to get married and how many kids I want to have get into the interview instead of what I want to bring to the table at work and discussing my career prospects. Women have a big challenge when it comes to being taken seriously at work, especially if you look a certain way. Yes, I do get a lot of probing why I didn't try my hands at sales, as it would be just too easy for you to get a lot of sales during the time I was at marketing. Previous salary. It's none of their business. I will talk about the salary range that I'm interested in, but answering previous salary questions will only screw you. That is certainly true. Never ever disclose your previous salary with a new potential employer.
Well, I refuse to answer if I was religious and not a fornicator.
Well, that's alright if you don't want to tell us, sir, because God already knows. I assume this was for an employer that had a very religious tilt. When I lived in DC, I had an interview with the mayor's office. Mind you, he was a mayor I didn't particularly like. When I got there, it was like 75 people waiting in a big room. When it was finally my turn, they brought me into another room. The first 5 minutes were standard interview questions, but the two 20-year-olds conducting the interview were completely uninterested. Neither of them looked up from their Blackberries once. I was getting extremely irritated, as I knew I had much more political experience than them anyway. So when one of them, with her face still in her Blackberry, said, "Tell me 5 things you love about Mayor Fenty," I had it. I said, "I think we're done here," and got up and left. That got them to look at me. Not a question so much as a request. Was a senior in college in 2012, so the job market was still for crap, and anyone who had graduated college in the last 4 to 5 years was actively fighting for any and all open positions of any sort still. Be it in waiting tables, answering phones, landscaping, nannying, under the table work, and obviously any entry-level positions. So I managed to get an interview with a marketing firm. I'm sure most of you know where this is going. It was a direct marketing service where you go door to door. My first interview goes well, and I'm a bit confused as this was in an office park suite office. They purportedly have 55 employees, yet this office suite was 2 offices and a small front desk area for the secretary. Where was everyone's desks, I asked myself. Later that night, I received a call back for a second interview, so for a second weekend in a row, I head back to my hometown, miss my current job, and 2 weekends in a row worth of cash working at a late-night restaurant, and gas money for 2 round trips, totaling in at around $100 in gas, 2 full tanks, and a loss of almost an entire $375 paycheck for that half of the month, plus a solid $150 in tips for each weekend missed. Showed up for the second interview, and instead of sitting in that little office and answering more questions, meeting people around the office and the like, they take me and 6 other people outside. We're then told we will be going out in the field for the day and knocking on
on doors. None of us were told about this, so all 4 of us females are in interview suits in heels. I start immediately hounding the interviewer and insist I am being told where I'm being taken, and he says he isn't at liberty to disclose that. So I confrontingly state, let me get this straight. You want me, a 20-something female, to get into a car with out-of-state plates with 3 men I've never met before, to go somewhere unknown, to walk around somewhere unknown for an unknown amount of time on the fly, and I have to turn my cell phone off? He just looks at me like a moron after I've spelled out how sketchy this all is. So after some awkward silence, I continue, how dare you lie to myself and all of these other clearly desperate folks about every aspect of this job and cost me money to get here. Screw you if you think I'll come with you, and screw you again if you think I won't go into details on this to the BBB. It's then that he flips out and follows me as I head back into the office park. The interview room now has been retransformed into the CEO's office, nameplate and everything. When they asked me what I was doing, I demanded my resume back from their pile and told them I'd be spreading the word and make sure others know before coming in here. They freaked out, offered to pay me back for my gas to try and prevent me from reporting them. I let them write me a check, and just as I was leaving their office/interview room, a new slew of kiddos my age were shuffling in for their ill-fated interviews. I warned them all loudly and cursed out the CEO again, and was followed out by all 8 people. They were supposed to interview again. Being a journalism student, I did the only thing worse than reporting them, which I also did. I got in contact with a local reporter for the paper who was a friend of mine and got them to run an article about scam companies and interviewing vulnerable and desperate recent grads. Their company logo made the header of the page. I actually personally have some experience with fraud companies. I did an interview in 2019 and I joined a company for a little bit. I won't go into details on what it was, but I always got this very weird feeling about everyone there. Not everyone there, but the people who owned the place, I guess. And as it turned out, when I was discussing it with someone that I worked with, a while later, like a few years later, and we ran into each other, I asked about it, and they were like, oh yeah, they were actually using it as a cover to sell the devil's lettuce, and who knows what else. And I was just like, oh my freaking god, I knew that place was off. After that, I was glad I was only there for maybe a month or 2. This was during a mock interview while I was in college. The professor had her husband come in and we had to go in one by one and do an interview just like in real life. Well, everyone is going in and coming out smiling, not taking too long, so I thought it would be a cakewalk. My turn is next. I go in and everything is going smoothly. He takes a look at my resume and sees that I was in the military. He asks, tell me about your time in the military. So I tell him what I did, that I worked with a variety of different people from different backgrounds with different views on life and opinions, and that I supervise people, etc. He says, okay, good, and continues with the interview, asks a few more questions, then says, tell me about your time in the military. I figured maybe he didn't realize he already asked that question, or maybe it was a test, so I repeated what I said. He starts turning slowly in his chair, looking at the ceiling, and says again, tell me about your time in the military. I just looked at him. He stopped spinning in his chair and looked at me. After about 20 seconds, he says, okay, we're done here. I got a B. What secret are you hiding from everyone but okay to share with us here? That I'm leaving my job in a few weeks. I keep having people try and schedule things with me months in advance where I'm sort of forced to smile and agree. It's always weird to be in that space of too early to give notice. I was abused by a neighbor in my adolescence. I didn't tell anybody because I was a boy and embarrassed by it all. The thought of my dad or brothers finding out was too much. Just packed it away. He died when I was away at college. Good riddance. I concur. I found out recently that I have an extra $10,000 in student debt. It's a pretty big secret. I failed high school twice and I'm faking going to college, but instead taking high school final exams. I feel sad and disappointed looking at my parents' faces, but I can't do anything. Instead, just give my best in the exams. My exams are from 2nd of July. Please wish me luck. I really need it. I mean, this was like 5 years ago, so I hope you passed it by now, bud. I am a pathological liar. I don't even mean to do it, but I just do at this point, and it scares me a bit. I am fixing it, though. That's a goddamn lie, and you know it! The family computer didn't break because of downloading music. It was me and my adolescent internet browsing. Oh boy, I've been there, buddy.
It seems stupid, but after 3 kids and divorce, I can't figure out my frickin' life, neither where I'm going. I carry around regrets and mom guilt, and I'm completely lost. My wife cheated on me, and we're going through the start of the divorce process. My family doesn't even know. I'm in agony every day. I had some surgery that went very, very wrong, and I am struggling to keep motivated to keep going. I'm a grown man, and I love Winnie the Pooh. I don't own any memorabilia or anything, but I watch YouTube videos, and if I see it on TV, I have to watch it. Hey, buddy, I love Winnie the Pooh too. I don't think there's a single individual on this planet that doesn't, on some level, love Winnie the Pooh, except for maybe the leader of the CCP. I like having crushes, but not actually doing anything about them. Partially because I enjoy the blissful feeling of liking someone, and partially because that gets ruined whenever I actually do anything about it. I regret deeply not bonding more with my college class. I just now realized that I was liked by them, and I kinda pushed them away all these years. I want to tell my boyfriend I love him, but I think he needs to get help for his mental health issues before this relationship moves forward. Honey, according to women, that's just about every man in the world. But you do you. I'm afraid of my neighbor. I don't know why, but he just creeps me out. He's always staring at me, occasionally making comments on my body. Oh, is that you? I thought for sure someone sent a model over. You have a great body for a teenager. Those shorts look awfully short on you. I'm 14. He and my dad are friends and is always over at my house. When he comes over, I'll always hide in my room. My mom doesn't like him either because of the time he came during my baby sister's sleepover and just sat in silence at the fire pit while my dad went inside to get drinks. I'm afraid to say anything to my dad because I know he isn't able to get out with his friends a lot, and he really likes my neighbor, but I can't shake the feeling that something is just off with him. A few of these are being quite relatable, and we're only 3 minutes in. I also dislike my neighbor, and not because he makes inappropriate comments about my body, but that would certainly be a problem. I'm really big on honesty because of growing up with a narcissistic parent. However, I never tell people that I am bipolar. I am a PTA mom in the suburbs. The judgment and stigma that would come along with that knowledge would likely affect my entire family. I am physically falling apart. My health is a chain of unfortunate events. I quit smoking, I barely drink, I stay physically fit enough to remain in the military, yet I fight every day just to pretend I am okay. I'm tired of being in physical pain with every little thing, but I will continue the charade until something finally gives permanently. It actually scares me. I hate that I'm 45 years old and feel as if I'm 80. The secret is that everyone I know thinks I'm so strong. I've overcome so much. I'm a fighter. Blah, blah, blah. The reality is I live in daily pain and it's starting to wear on me physically and emotionally. Finally, I just started seeing a therapist. I was afraid to, but I can't handle the anxiety by myself anymore. It's civilian. I simply have lost faith in the military medical system. Not sure how I feel about it yet, but it's not hurting me so far. Glad to hear you're starting to get help. My maternal grandfather was a hitman who killed several politicians and activists in his country during a very corrupt time. He moved to the US and remarried. My paternal grandfather was a corrupt politician who hired hitmen on his political opponents and embezzled right before stepping down from office and avoiding indictment. Not sure if they ever met because this is all I know and found this all out by chance. I don't even think my own parents know this much. That is a pretty insane goddamn coincidence. Like, wow. Recorded my fiance yesterday. I got him to talk about his D&D character, and I didn't want to forget anything because I'm going to commission an art piece of it for his birthday. It's killing me to keep it a secret because I tell him everything. I hope he likes it. Whoever this lucky man might be, she's a keeper, my friend. When I was reading that, I was expecting it to go in a different direction. Thank goodness. That was wholesome. I sometimes hope my grandma passes away soon. She has severe dementia and Alzheimer's, and my mom is the only person my grandma will allow to help her, which means she's basically on call 24/7. She's aggressive, a runner, and basically has the mind of a toddler. I feel like a butthole for thinking it, but we've been mourning losing who she used to be. Losing her physically would mean she could be at peace, and my mom could finally take a break. You know, as someone whose grandmother also suffered from memory loss and mental issues towards the end of her life, I understand to a degree. I never got to that point, but it is sad to lose someone on an emotional level in your life that to the point where they don't even remember you. It's sad. It's hard. About 15 years ago, I slept with my high school teacher. Literally never spoke about it out loud to anyone, ever. This is actually the first time I wrote it down even. Guess 15 years is long enough for it to feel like it just doesn't matter anymore. I lost contact with all of my friends months ago. I still try to be happy and smile through everything. I'm a pretty positive person. I think there will come better times, but especially now in summertime when I see everyone on social media are going out swimming or having cookouts, it's kind of sad to be at home all the time or go for a walk by yourself all the time. Why is it so hard to find new friends? Damn. One is the loneliest number you can ever do. Whenever I think about that song, I think of Recess the movie. Anyway, I'm sorry you're feeling very lonely, dude. One of my best friend's dad cheated on their wife with a secretary or something and she got pregnant. They kept her baby. That was around the time my friend was born. Fast forward 19 years later on, I meet this guy at work who looks a lot like my friend. When he figures out that I know him, he tells me his story. My friend to this day doesn't know he has a half-brother living in the same city as him, and I can't tell him because the half-brother promised me not to because his dad won't allow it. Pretty screwed up. The father of both told the half-brother to not tell his brother about his existence or he will stop supporting his college education, among other things. Why, you may ask? Because his wife doesn't know about him, and that will definitely destroy their marriage and family, which is selfish as all hell. I cannot say anything either because if I do, I will be the architect of a marriage and family falling apart, or worse, for something which is really not any of my business and didn't ask to be a part of. The thing is that the half-brother wants to be the one to go directly to his brother and tell him everything when he's financially capable of supporting himself, and that's something I have to respect. I've known my friend since childhood, and it hurts me not to tell him, but I've been trying to find a way to let him know without being the architect of anything. The 23andMe thing is actually a good idea, and I've taken it into consideration. I appreciate the idea, so I might see if I can come up with something. Buddy, that right there sounds like a whole lot of none ya. None ya what? None ya business. And I'm sure that Secret Love Child Man has a plan, a process, he will get it done in due time, but don't push it.
I'm a digital artist who made a bunch of paid commissions already. However, it's all cheated. I used a software for the anatomy and just trace over it. I become that good in line art and coloring, where the obvious tracer red flags don't work anymore. I've never wanted this to come that far, but as soon as I made my first trace drawing, I got sucked into an abyss that is impossible to leave. All my friends know me as the artist. There are many I wouldn't ever have been able to talk to without my art, but most importantly, my parents are proud of my work and call me talented. For the fact that I live in constant fear that my parents are disappointed in me, hearing them compliment my drawings is everything to me. But it hurts so much, seeing them love a work I've no right to present, especially when I try to fit in and complain about tracers while I'm just one of them. This is going on for 3 years by now. Bloody hell, don't trace. Either you get caught or you'll suffer because you weren't brought to your senses.
Not only do I free the raccoons the homeowners association is trying to catch, but I feed them beef tips while I eat frozen dinners. Not sorry. I once saw one of those little freaks rip off a car antenna ornament and run away with glee, and that was hilarious, and now we are homies for life. Well, I can already tell you're an individual that likes to fly pretty close to the sun. Do not play this game, my friend. I have been down this road. You will be tried for treason when they find out your identity. Your family won't be safe. Your loved ones, your friends, they're all dead if they find out you freed those raccoons. Why, oh, why would you even risk incurring the wrath of the Homeowners Association of all things? Even though I have a master's degree, I don't know if I'll ever figure out what I want to do with my life. Nothing really pulls me. Well, you know, that sucks, but things could be way worse. You could be a guy without a master's degree and still not have a pull in life whatsoever. That's certainly not the worst situation to be in, and you know, some people don't have a pull in life and also don't have a master's degree. You're in a good situation. You have a qualification. You can do that until you find your passion. Just keep on broadening your horizons, and eventually you'll find it. I hope you do. I touch myself in the bathroom at work sometimes. I would literally never tell that to a soul. HR is long overdue to have a word with you. I wish a couple of my exes would talk to me again, even just as friends. I miss them a lot. I emotionally abuse myself hardcore. It's to the point now where my life seems to be falling apart because of it. I don't know how to stop either. I can get all the positive things said, but I don't believe it. I doubt every bit of it, telling myself they don't see all the bad because I hide it. The worst part is knowing all this and not believing myself. My dog was put down today in my arms. I don't want my friends to know. I don't want their I'm sorries and condolences. I don't know what I want, but not that. No hugs. I want to mourn in my own way. Other than my family, I want to climb this mountain myself.
I want to be able to use the word mate so badly. I can't stand it, but I don't want to seem crazy. I'm an American. I've got a fair few American friends, and I've heard one or two of them say mate in the friendly way, obviously, and yeah, there's something weird about it. Maybe it's their specific accents, but it does weirdly sound wrong. I flushed a Capri Sun juice box into the toilet and blamed it on my little sister. I was 8 at the time, and because of me, we had to open the pipes to remove it. Still haven't told anyone. Everyone thinks my chicken is amazing, but I just buy Popeyes and Churches and mix them together on a plate. Man literally went, but what if I were to purchase fast food and disguise it as my own cooking? Delightfully devilish, Seymour. I was a waiter at a local restaurant. The other night, a man paid his check for the family and tipped me on $158 by giving me $180 in total, in 20s. Now, he had been there for hours and been really annoying, so I had been happy to get anything from him. While I'm counting out the money, the man approached me, says he gave me too much and takes a $20 bill back, giving me a $2 tip. I bit my tongue and walked away. Fast forward, I go to sweep under his table to see his driver's license fell out onto the ground. I casually swept it up and threw it away because screw that guy. He can go waste time at the DMV just like I wasted time serving him. You know what? I might not agree with it, but good for you. You got your pound of flesh. My girlfriend and I have been dating for 4 years now, and for 4 years we've been dating, I have always found her mother to be very, very attractive. I often fantasize about her. I know I'm weird, can't help it. I recently bought 2 baby goats. My wife doesn't know. I picked them up on Saturday. This is gonna go one of 2 ways. Fingers crossed. I wish you and your goats good luck, sir. I have a corn snake in my no-pit apartment, and 2 of my roommates don't know. Shh. There's a bit of backstory here. I'm adopted and I have a great relationship with my biological family. I was born in Montana and I live in the southern Midwest. I only met my great-grandmother once when she passed. I was asked to come up to Montana because she left me something in her will and testimony. I had to read the will and testimony with my biological father. She left me a 150-acre ranch with a house and a bunker, and it's paid off. I have never told my adoptive family that I own the land and that all of my money goes to preparing all the bunker for super big emergency situations. Inherits land, becomes a doomsday prepper. You know what? It's not a bad use for it. I attempted self-deletion, and then when I lived, barely, I made it my life's work to create a non-profit for stressed-out students in school. Truthfully, it's just my way of fighting the self-deletion thoughts I have. It kills me how disinterested my family and friends are in supporting me. But I continue forward since I do help kids, and am proud of what I do. Maybe one day I can afford healthcare and I can fix my own head. It feels so selfish to volunteer and help in the community when I can't afford food and have to beg for help from my parents. I work for the school district and no work in the summer. I just wish there was a way for me to meet others like me. There has to be others out there who lived and are like, now what? Kids love my programs, but unfortunately, I don't have a head for business. It's definitely commendable that you're trying to help others in such a way, but I also think it's important to learn to live within your means and help yourself before you try to help others, because, well, when you're out of luck and out of funds or whatever, then who's going to help the people that you've been supporting? I really want to call CPS on my niece-in-law. Her 4-year-old daughter is still in diapers, has a vocabulary of under 40 words, and rotted her front teeth down to the gum line, likely because she still drinks from a bottle. This poor child's parents don't give half a damn about her, and it kills me every time I visit. The only reason I don't is because their house belongs to my mother-in-law, and between it being overcrowded, 7 humans, and far too many cats, 9? Someone would have to intervene in response to the CPS call. I just want somebody to hold, bro. Me too, buddy. Me too. I have DID, dissociative identity disorder, and I haven't told anyone for 4+ years. I was going to tell my family last year, but then Split came out and they saw it almost immediately. So if that's not an awkward time to break it to your parents and siblings that you've got the same mental disorder as a fictional murderer in a movie, by the way, Split was relatively inaccurate on certain DID things, just for y'all's education, that they just happened to watch, there's no way I would be believed.
I'm going to be killing off my character in D&D and have their body become possessed by a ghost and have that be my new character, but have them pretend to be the original person. It's complicated, but fun as hell for me personally. One day, I walked out to my backyard and saw my dad standing by our compost pile with a couple buckets of dirt and the hose. He was taking a handful of dirt and spraying through them with the hose. I asked him what he was up to. At first, he wouldn't tell me and tried to brush me off. I persisted, and eventually, he told me that early in my mother and his marriage, he had lost his wedding ring when doing work along the side of the house. At the time, he went out and bought an identical ring to the original, and my mom was none the wiser. Apparently, for the last 15 years, when spring comes around and he does any cleaning on that side of the house, he searches through the dirt. My mom still doesn't know he lost the original ring. Personally, I actually think that is so sweet. I burned down my neighbor's house and my family paid them, the neighbors, over $500,000 under the table so that I wouldn't get in trouble, and so that they could buy a new house, a new car, and new furniture, and all that. This was back when I was 7 years old, and I regret it all now. No one else knows this except for my family, my neighbors, and myself. My bathroom is 3 flights down, and let me tell you that sometimes I just don't make it before an accident happens, so I bought a Shiwi and now pee in a bottle if I need to in the middle of the night. The relief is awesome. I'm basically always anxious and furious at the office about how little work I have at my job. I have 10 years experience doing this, so crap doesn't take me very long, even when I spend extra time on something, so it looks like I have more to do than I actually have. It's 100% the company's fault. During the interview, I even said that the position doesn't seem like it'll have a lot of work and asked what the day-to-day is like. They laughed and said I definitely have enough work, but I don't. The most annoying part, aside from trying to look busy all day, is a couple people who are higher than me give me crap about my office hours, despite them screwing around all day, never being at their desk, taking more vacation and sick days than we have allotted, and constantly working from home despite the office weirdly not being too down with that officially. I come in about 20 minutes late every day and leave about 20 minutes early. I eat lunch at my desk like a sad employee because I always want to be around in case someone decides they have something for me to do. I'm at my desk more than these couple of people that give me crap for it. They sometimes say they were looking for me, but I wasn't at my desk. And when I excitedly ask what they wanted and if they had work for me, they say no, and then disappear for the next couple hours. They're just giving me crap. I do all the work assigned to me and even do stuff on my own that I feel needs to be done. There is a backlog of work I've completed that no one has implemented. I can't implement it. Some of it is almost a year old. I always ask if people have crap for me to do, and only a couple people ever do. I am constantly worried that I'm going to get fired, despite the company actually needing me and my work. But due to other crappy employees, office politics, and bureaucracy, I have about an hour of work a day, if that. It's also pretty difficult to get jobs at my level in my field, so every day I just have to be anxious and angry, assuming I'm going to get canned before I find a new job. It's definitely infuriating when you're in a work environment that just isn't functioning correctly, especially when you are not the issue at hand. It's just a general thing and other people screwing you over. I was visiting some family on a farm, and they have these geese that are super aggressive and always trying to flex on everybody, and one of them came at me a few weeks ago, and all I did was clap back and touch one feather just to show it I was serious, and then it turned around and ran into my parked car and just looked super upset and confused. It wasn't hurt, and it literally just walked into a car, but it looked so sad that moment, and I feel so guilty. I took the cookie from the cookie jar. I am secretly dating my ex-girlfriend's best friend. Neither of us have told anyone because we know how much word tends to get around, and she doesn't want to lose her friend. What are people's feelings on that? Is it bad to date your friend's ex wholesale, just outright, or is there a mature and, good way to go about it? Like, if the two or everyone can be mature about the whole thing, I'm curious. I never learned how to put my bra on behind my back like a normal person. I hook it up and put it on like a shirt. There is still hope for you. You can just get a bra that you don't need to hook. What are your unforgettably creepy moments? I saw the aftermath of what happens when a 350-pound man jumps out of a 20-story window. It does not look like what they show on TV. When I was 12 years old, my friends and I were riding our bikes through some woods down an old dirt road that wasn't much used anymore. I decided it would be cool for me to go off-road and rode off into the forest. I got about 50 feet before I got disorientated and started going towards the creek, which was in a dell down a steep hill. From there, something else I didn't know, so I crashed down the hill and hit this huge boulder collection before coming to a rest. Off toward the road, I could hear my friends calling to me, so I knew which way to go. I started over towards their voices and saw a super old rusted out car. Now, I was a huge license plate collector back then, and finding rusted out cars in the woods was not that odd of an occurrence, so I went to see if I could harvest the license plate. When I got there, I saw there were bones in the front seat and a pile of rags. It was full-on Raiders of the Lost Ark with a skeleton on a pike kind of thing. I screamed like a little girl and got the hell out of there. I told my parents later, who called the police, and after some investigation determined that the man had disappeared during a blizzard in the late 50s and was never heard from again. I met his widow and children and won an award from the town. I'll never forget that feeling. Creepy as hell. This occurred in 1981. He had been missing for 20 plus years at that point, and I am now a 43-year-old man. I have no long-term effects from this event. I remember it. I remember being scared at the time and then completely puzzled as to why finding something by accident and then telling my parents about it was such a big deal. I went in the basement and looked in the box where I thought that certificate might have been, but it wasn't there. My mom might have had it. I'll ask my sister if she's seen it. No, I didn't get the license plate. My friends and I went back after all the dust had died down and they had pulled the car out. I've not been back there in decades. The amount of time the body was there is kind of crazy to me, but it's also kind of nice, only kind of nice, that the family must have gotten at least a little bit of closure from knowing exactly what happened to him. More traumatic than creepy, but saw the immediate aftermath of an adolescent run over by the school bus next to the one I was on. It was a cold morning and there was steam coming off the body. I remember that and the spilled lunchbox. This is why they have sweeper bars on the front of the buses now, to make sure adolescents walk far enough in front of the bus that the driver can see them. I have a young daughter now, and these are the things that keep me up at night. Saw a dead guy pulled out of a creek on my parents' property when I was 16. He flipped his truck while high and drunk and trespassing. He decided to leave when the cops were called on him. He didn't make the turn onto the bridge and it flipped his truck into the creek. He broke his neck upon impact. A bunch of guys tried to get him out, but the mud was suctioning him down. When the EMTs and police showed up, they got him out and he was bloated and white by that time. They put him on the rescue sled to pull him up the bank. His bloated white head was bobbing because of his broken neck. That image is burned into my brain. I used to live in a funeral home, literally in a funeral home. My parents owned it, but we didn't have enough income to really support a home for ourselves. So we took part of the building and kind of converted it into an apartment. Due to some pretty bad planning on my parents' part, we had the living room right next to the area where we kept the bodies, which was right next to the embalming room. Basically, every day I'd see a random naked dead guy or two sitting on a table right outside where I was playing. Sometimes my dad would be working in the embalming room, you know what I mean by working, and since there were pretty big windows on the door, God knows why, I would get to see almost everything, from a guy getting stabbed and having his blood let out, to the egregious stitching that would have to be done to guys coming from the morgue. But as time goes on, you just get used to it, and all of it isn't really that scary. You don't really know any of the people that you see dead, so there's no real psychological impact on you. The only scary thing is when friends of the family get sent to the funeral home. That could put a man in the mental clinic. Growing up in the funeral home, now boys, stop playing with the embalming fluid. When I was learning to drive, my father would accompany me. There was a football game in town that the rest of my family was at, but I was not going for some reason. On my way home and into my neighborhood, a fairly large neighborhood, we went past a van, a plain white van that was off, until it turned on and followed us all the way to the road that my house is on. It went to the cul-de-sac. My father took the truck to the game, leaving no vehicles in the parking area and myself alone at home. That white van decided to pull into my driveway, so I ran into my father's closet and grabbed a shooty bang bang and walked out in my front porch with it drawn at the van. That van went into reverse and backed out of my driveway faster than it came in. It was a very strange experience, and I sat on my porch for a good 30 minutes before going back inside for the night. My neighbor didn't pick up his kids from school one day, so I had to break into his house. I found him on the basement floor with no clothes on. I could tell he was still alive, but obviously there was brain damage as he couldn't form words or even move. I later found out he had a brain aneurysm and he had no clothes on because it happened while he was having some alone time. Man can't even be alone and naked in his house without being worried about a brain aneurysm. God damn. Look, I won't lie, I can be a bit of a hypochondriac. It's like, you feel that pain in your chest off and like, oh God, is it over? I was working in an ice cream shop when I was in high school, and at night, in the winter, it would only be me and another manager. It was in a pretty nice area, and behind the store, there was a giant park that got really creepy at night. That night, the manager was a girl, like myself, not too much older than me, and when we are closing, we have to do trash. We were both pretty small, but we could easily do it by ourselves. I decided to take the trash out that night because she was counting money. So I get all the bags out, and I walk outside, and in the parking lot next to the trash, there is a man standing there. He was wearing sweats, and there was just this look of hatred on his face that I've never seen in anybody before. I ran back in, locked the doors to be safe, and did some dishes thinking that I could do the trash later. I walked into the main room of the store where there are all the windows, and he was standing there in the window just looking in, and I will never forget the smile that came on his face when he saw me again. It was the worst mix of evil and complete joy. I can't even describe how his eyes were. They were filled with hate. A hate that I've never seen on anybody before. I ran into the back room with my manager, and we hid there for what felt like 2 hours until the police came. By then, he was gone, of course. However, he was arrested a few weeks later for the brutal assault and killing of a girl my stature and hair color. Obviously, I don't know anything about this, and I'm so sorry you went through that. I'm sorry for a lot of the people that go through some of the stuff that they do on this, but that sounds absolutely terrifying. I was just saying the other day how crazy and just downright petty some of the motives that people have for doing certain heinous and brutal things to other people are. I was flying to India, and we had just stopped in Germany. I was 14 and sitting next to this old guy who I thought was asleep the whole time. I shake him because we landed, because he was kind of laying on me. No response. I was an unaccompanied minor, so when the stewardess came to get me, she looked at him, checked his pulse, and then everyone was ordered to stay where they were, including me. The paramedics came and declared him dead. I never knew for how long. I had never seen a dead guy up close before and was surprised at the time. I thought he would smell of something rotten when he died or would make a noise or something beforehand. To this day, I always think if I had noticed earlier, I could have helped him. I also had a dead guy lay on my shoulder for 8 hours, and I fell asleep during that flight as well, so there was a good chance I used his head as a pillow while I slept. Creepy, but that's life. Once when I was like 10 years old, my dad was unemployed and we were struggling for a few months financially, and some kid in school called me a broke bum over something I don't even remember, and he told me to buy some decent clothes and that I looked like a hobo. It wasn't that bad, he was just saying stuff to hurt me. That really struck a nerve, so after school I walked up to him while he was sitting on his bike, and I punched him so hard on the one side of his head that blood started coming out of his nose and his left eye turned red. He screamed, "Oh my God, I can't see!" I just felt sick to my stomach and felt like a monster. I just wanted to disappear that moment. But he was fine after a few minutes. It's good that you felt bad. Is it an excuse? No, but you felt bad, and that's a good thing because it means that you have empathy. But you know what? On the other hand, that kid probably never grew up to talk so much unnecessary smack ever again. I say unnecessary. You said yourself, you don't know why you were arguing. You might have been the one at fault. You, sir, are an unreliable narrator. But that's okay, I am too. You seen these comments out here? They're killing me. When I was young, one of my friends was killed just outside of school in the woods. A week or so later, my friends and I were walking through them, like dumb little idiots. And we found the knife still covered in blood. One of the guys picked it up and took it back to the school. Luckily, it was a simple case and the guy was already arrested, or we could have messed up the evidence for the case. But needless to say, that was what put it in my mind that the murder had actually happened and that I needed to be more careful. When I was younger, I used to have really intense visual hallucinations. Some normal stuff, glowing orbs, floating hands, that kind of thing. But the creepiest thing that I ever saw was my own dead body on the floor in front of me, wearing the exact same clothes I was wearing at the time. You know, I literally just heard this the other day, but apparently if you drink more than 6 cups cups of green tea a day or something, you can start having hallucinations apparently. I don't know if that's true, and I do not endorse anyone testing it out or whatever, because why the hell would you want to drink 6 or more cups of green tea anyway? This might not be the caliber of the other stories here, but this freaked me out when I first saw it. So like 4 years ago when I was in high school, I used to exercise in the basement of my house, which is connected to the garage because my house is built into the side of a hill. Anyway, I'm exercising when I hear this loud clicking noise coming from the garage. I had no idea what it was. It was like 10 p.m. and everyone else was either asleep or in their bedroom on the other side of the house. I opened the door to the garage and I can't even comprehend what I was looking at. A bat had gotten its wing stuck to some fly tape, and the clicking was its teeth against its bone. It was trying to bite off its arm. The clicking was so loud. I'm picturing it, the imagery, the darkness. It sounds creepy as hell. Hell, I remember one time I walked into my kitchen, got this weird colored LED light thing in it, and I turn it on, pitch black room turns to pure red. Scared the crap out of me, but this is way creepier. The bat, the imagery, the darkness, the lateness, it's all perfect. It's way scarier than my thing. Back in college, a junkie broke a window to get into my apartment, stole some stuff, a camera, some of my roommate's girlfriend's jewelry, whatever. Called the police, boarded up the window, and started to go to bed. Until my roommate pulled back his covers and found a blood-soaked rag hidden under his sheets. The guy had cut himself on the window and hidden the rag. Still no idea why he bothered. I want to say it was his attempt at hiding DNA evidence, but obviously it was a very bad attempt. When I was 13, me and my friends were hanging around town like usual. We went to the park first in the morning. We saw a man who looked to be in his 40s. He was wearing a hood and he had a long beard. He had a can of beer and got up and started walking toward us, so we ran. Later on, we were taking a shortcut through the library's car park to go to McDonald's, and we saw the same guy standing by some bushes staring directly at us. 2 of my friends, girls, started dancing for some reason. They hadn't seen him. It was only me that saw him. I told my best friend Walter, and we tried to get everyone else to hurry up. Walter turned around to check everyone and saw the guy in the bushes now. His fly was undone and his dangly bits were hanging out. We ran as fast as we could, and we didn't see him any more times after that. I should certainly hope not. So this was pretty weird for me. My mom used to take me and my brother to the beach every summer for a week. Well, one year we're walking along the beach and we get pretty far. I was probably around 8 or 10 years old, so it felt pretty far to me, for whatever that's worth, to where the beach got kind of desolate. There we saw something lying in the sand. My mom just said it was a sea slug or some kind of worm from the ocean, and I bought it. Well, a few years later, I have the distinct memory of having a sudden clarence moment and thinking to myself, that was no worm, that was a man's dangly bits. Yes, someone had cut off a man's dangly bits and it somehow ended up on a beach on the East Coast. A likely story, but it might also be something that is known as a geoduck, which does very much look like a one-eyed wiggly worm. Bus ride on vacation in Greece, windy mountain road, suddenly a load of bees, then really lots of bees, then all the bees. Rounded a corner to see a truck on its side, broken beehives all over the place. As our driver sped up to get away from the bees, I'm pretty sure I saw a flash of the driver of the crash truck falling to the ground, covered from head to toe in bees. Always assumed he was not getting up from that. Death by bees is not a way I would like to go, nor is it something I would like to witness. I was on an international flight, and upon landing, the flight attendant was unable to wake the lady in the seat directly behind me. They called the paramedic upon landing, but it was obvious that she was dead. I heard them say, "She's dead." And they made us all get off the plane so they could remove the body. Perhaps not creepy, but more of a did that really just happen type of moment for me. Also, when I was 16, I saw a guy get capped. It was on Thanksgiving, and that's about all I remember about it. In comparing the 2 plane stories that we have where people died on them, I can't help but think, how is it on one side you had people be like, "It's okay, young man, just stay there while this corpse is on top of you," and the other one where, reasonably, "Okay, everyone just get off the plane while we get the paramedics in here." It's just different mindsets, I guess, or company process? Either way, I prefer one to the other. Not really nearly as creepy as most of these stories, but a few years ago, I was kayaking in western North Carolina. Beautiful day, pretty calm river, but the water was low and rocks were out in force. I kept having to push them off. At one point, I was coming up to a medium-sized brownish rock and preemptively tried to push off it and moved it. Thinking, that's weird, I continued to push it, only to turn around and realize that it was a dead dog. The face looked kind of mutilated, and now that I'd dislodged it from whatever kept it in place, it rode the white water and followed me down for a while. The worst part was that I kept finding them. 4 dead dogs, all seemingly killed violently, floating down the river with me, bumping against my kayak. That legitimately sounds like the worst kayaking trip ever. My friend and I had permission to go over to this abandoned house to basically loot what's left of the house and keep what we picked out. The house was empty except for junk and empty pill bottles and medication. The garage, however, was filled by the mounds of crap the previous tenants had left over. As we're rummaging through the crap and books, I find a bag filled with gun parts and triggers, lower receiver, barrel and firing pins, and a banana mag and another gun that was just missing the stock and firing pins. Gold mine. I quickly pocket that crap in my backpack and continue searching after finding this amazing loot, and I continue up into the attic. I find a small journal and a bunch of meds and needles and a bunch of government files and folders with red tape all over. The documents had redacted black lines and stuff, so all I could make out was that they had an operation initiated for deploying weapons or something. So after that, I read the journal. The journal belonged to the wife of the man who lived there. At first, it started off very dark. Stuff like he would start coming home late at night without announcing himself and would mutter and get angry. Later, he was being treated with meds for which I don't know and don't remember what meds was left in the attic, and apparently was a paranoid schizophrenic and was extremely abusive and would hurt the wife and not remember doing that a few seconds afterwards. She spiraled into depression and talked about self-deletion and stuff. Then one of her friends took her to church and it seems to make her feel better. The last time she saw him alive was when she went to get his meds refilled and later came home to find him dead by self-deletion. He had a lot of firearms and the police confiscated most of the guns. Shocked after reading it, I found another diary or book written by the husband, and it was filled with poems about his wife, life, death, etc. His poems were nice, but I always keep wondering what really happened to the guy. I don't have the diary anymore, nor a photographic memory or evidence. You'll just have to take my word for it. Well, that just made me sad. I left my pillow in the car at a hotel parking lot outside of Atlanta as a kid. I, of course, went back to go get it at night, turned a corner only to be met with a hobo touching himself. Scarred me for life. I haven't had anything too creepy happen to me, but my dad has seen a lot of stuff. He used to be an accident investigator, vehicle accidents, in Iran. He's had 2 accidents that have burned into the back of his skull. The first was a bus that had some sort of metal pole, sorry for the lack of a better word, go through the front and skewer passengers. He explained how when they opened the bus door, there was blood spilling down the steps. The other was when he was at the police station where he worked. Before I start, let me say that it was a tradition to turn your truck's light off when you pass a police station. At this station, they had a sign saying not to because it caused a lot of car accidents. So what happened was that there was this 18-wheeler driving down and he decided to turn his lights off. At the same time, on the other side of the street, there were 3 young guys, ages somewhere from 18 to 21, in a car that would resemble a Mini Cooper. They had the stereo on full blast and pretty much having a good time. As the young guys were driving, they didn't see the 18-wheeler coming their way. I guess what happened was they didn't see it and pretty much drove on the wrong side of the road. You can guess what happened. I remember my dad saying how the music on the small car stereo went completely silent right when they crashed. The 3 guys died on impact. Worst part? The truck driver came in with his food pretty much saying, "Hey, where can I go eat?" Emotionless and not caring that he just killed 3 people. My dad and the other guys working there, they were friends, took the guy into a room and beat the crap out of him. I was a 13-year-old kid sliding down the side of a gravel pit in an old quarry. The pit was located close to a private graveyard dating to the 17th and 18th centuries. On what would be my last slide down the side of the pit, a skull rolled down after me, landing with a dry rattle against the small of my back. I ran home and told my mother. I was panicking. Ultimately, the police were called. A high school teacher of mine, a man with an anthropology degree, was was called in when it apparently became quite obvious that this was nothing recent. It turns out that the skull belonged to a person who had died of tuberculosis, as was not uncommon during colonial times, of being a possible victim of a vampire attack. They had been buried outside of the graveyard, face down. At some point after they had been buried for a number of years, they were dug up and some of their bones were rearranged. The rattle I heard from the skull was due to the individual's canines having been removed, and they were found inside the skull. I had no idea about people from the 17th or 18th century being like, oh, tuberculosis, no, vampire attack, and stuff like that. But there's also something really entertaining to me. It's so like, TV show-esque, I guess. Obviously, fiction imitates reality, but like the whole call the teacher from the high school with the anthropology degree, I don't know, that's just fun to me. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Linked in the description below.